Chapter 428. Looking at the surprised expression on Qinchuan's face, Yao Rao sneered and asked, "What's wrong? Now you don't keep calling me demon woman?" Having heard what was said, Qinchuan slightly frowned. "If you don't want to say, then forget it." After saying this, Qinchuan turned his head to look at Qin Changxing. He had to wake Qin Changxing up and ask where the others had escaped to. As if Yao Rao had seen through Qinchuan's thoughts, she indifferently said, "If you wake him up now, he will scream in pain and then faint again. Do you believe me? What do you know?" Qinchuan deeply looked at Yao Rao. "I accept your invitation. As long as you save him, I will go to Tianyao Mountain as a guest after leaving unfettered secret realm." Having heard what was said, Yao Rao curled her lips and said, "It's already too late for you to accept my invitation. I still have other requests. What do you say?" Qinchuan clenched his teeth and said, "As long as you can save him, I will agree to all your requests." "Well, my first request is that you're not allowed to marry her." Yao Rao pointed at Yi Qingning, who was not far away. "So what if she is Star Dragon Goddess? In any case, I don't like her." Qinchuan really didn't understand why Yao Rao always had a problem with Yi Qingning, but now was obviously not the time to discuss this, so he readily agreed and said, "I promise you, I will absolutely not marry Yi Qingning in this life." Yi Qingning, who had just arrived, heard Qinchuan's promise to Yao Rao. Her complexion suddenly became pale, and her expression looking at Qinchuan also became extremely complicated. But all this was not noticed by Qinchuan. On the contrary, Yao Rao was very satisfied with the change in Yi Qingning's expression. "Since you have agreed to my request, then I will be merciful and tell you the reason why he was in so much pain just a moment ago. Those eggs and those black blood were only part of the reason. What really made him incomparably painful was the mental trauma. Before the mental trauma is healed, after he wakes up, he will once again faint in pain." Yao Rao faintly smiled and indifferently said, "What a coincidence. I happen to have a method to treat mental trauma." Hearing Yao Rao, Qinchuan immediately stretched out his hand. "Give it to me. I can't give it to you so easily." Yao Rao squatted down beside Qinchuan, then winked at Qinchuan. "Call me Demonis again." Facing Yao Rao's flirting, Qinchuan felt endless headache, so he helplessly asked, "What do you want this time?" "It's simple. I can help you save him, and I can even help you save your other friends. I can also provide you with information about the Inhumans, but you have to promise me 3 things. Yao Rao raised 3 fingers towards Qinchuan and said, "My request will not make you violate your principle of conduct. Moreover, will not make you throw away your life. How about it?" Having heard what was said, Qinchuan took a deep look at Yao Rao and said, "You have already blocked all the reasons I can refuse, so what else can I say? Hurry up and save him." Seeing Qinchuan had agreed to her conditions, Yao Rao no longer became long-winded. She straightforwardly took out a pure white feather, then inserted it into Qin Changxing's hair and said to Qinchuan, "This will do." Qinchuan looked at the feather on Qin Changxing's head and, somewhat astonished, asked, "What's the use of this?" "Of course it's useful. This is not a simple feather. You look at this feather, wait until it completely turns black, then your friend will be fine." "Are you sure?" Yao Rao solemnly vowed, but Qinchuan still felt it was not reliable. "If you don't believe, then take a look yourself." Yao Rao pointed at the feather on Qin Changxing's head. This moment, the feather had unexpectedly turned light gray. Seeing the change in color of the feather, Qinchuan finally believed the words of Yao Rao. He relaxed and said to Yao Rao, "Thank you." If not for Yao Rao's help, then Qinchuan really didn't know what to do in terms of mental trauma. "So you also know how to say thank you." Yao Rao looked at Qinchuan. "Not calling me Demonis anymore." The corner of Qinchuan's mouth slightly twitched, then said to Yao Rao, "Just now you said you have some understanding about these people. Can you tell me about it?" Although Yao Rao knew that Qinchuan was changing the topic, but she also didn't want to expose Qinchuan. The expression on her face also became serious. Then she said to Qinchuan, "In the records of my demon clan, the name of that multi-legged monster you killed just now should be called Sacred Beetle. It was the pet of Zerg, and also its mount." "Zerg?" Having heard this, Qin Chuan slightly frowned. He had never heard the name of this race. Yes, we Demon Clan call it Zerg, but according to their own meaning, this should be called Great Sacred Race. Yao Rao seriously said to Qin Chuan. The first time I saw Zerg was in the collection hall of Mount Tianyao. There were various specimens of Zerg collected there, including that big fellow sacred beetle, so I was able to recognize their origin. You Demon Clan and Zerg have contact? Zerg doesn't live in our space. They come from different world. They are real alien race. Yao Rao deeply looked at Qin Chuan and said, although we Demon Clan and you Human Clan have always been at war, but speaking of it, both of our clans are the masters of this world. We are the original inhabitants of this world, and Zerg is an alien race from other world. How did they come to unfettered, secret territory? I also don't know about this. Our Demon Clan hasn't seen Zerg for a long time. Yao Rao shook her head and said, I think the higher-ups of your Human Clan should also have a certain understanding of Zerg. Qin Chuan took a glance at Chen Changxing, who was still unconscious, then asked Yao Rao, Zerg should be an enemy, right? Of course it's an enemy. Yao Rao chuckled. Who do you think is the enemy that we Demon Clan and you Human Clan joined hands to fight against during the Great Chaos period? Hearing this, Qin Chuan's pupils suddenly shrunk, and he involuntarily said, Zerg? That's right. Yao Rao deeply looked at Qin Chuan. If Zerg is going to invade again, perhaps we Demon Clan and you Human Clan will have to join hands again. Although Human Clan and Demon Clan had been constantly at war for thousands of years, but relatively speaking, they were still relatively harmonious. But Zerg was different. Zerg was an alien race that invaded from the outside world, and Zerg's purpose was to destroy this world and occupy this world. Whether it was Human Clan or Demon Clan, they were all targets of Zerg's slaughter, and a single Human Clan or Demon Clan was absolutely not Zerg's opponent, so it was inevitable for Human Clan and Demon Clan to join hands. Of course, all of this was still uncertain. Zerg, Qin Chuan muttered in a low voice. The expression on his face was incomparably solemn. He didn't want to see the disaster and tragedy that happened during the Great Chaos period happen again. Chapter 429. While Qin Chuan and Yao Rao were talking, several holy sons of Demon Clan also came over. Looking at Qin Chuan and Yao Rao squatting together, the expression on their face became extremely strange. Regarding Qin Chuan, they actually didn't have any special feeling. If not for Yao Rao once issuing an arrest warrant for Qin Chuan, they might not have paid any attention to Qin Chuan. But now it was different. After fighting with Qin Chuan, they recognized Qin Chuan's strength, and at the same time, they were very curious about Qin Chuan's ability to transform into a dragon. How could a human transform into a pure dragon? This was a matter worth pondering. Qin Chuan, Zerg has reappeared. This matter is of great importance. Yao Rao seriously looked at Qin Chuan. I think it is necessary for us to join forces and investigate this matter clearly, to see whether Zerg's reappearance is a coincidence or premeditated. Having heard what Yao Rao said, Qin Chuan pondered for a moment, then turned his head to look at Yi Qingning, who was standing not far away, and asked, Miss Yi, do you know about Zerg? Yi Qingning shook her head and said, I have never heard of Zerg. You have never heard of Zerg? Qin Chuan was somewhat surprised. Yi family was one of the 4 great families of Star Dragon Federation, and Yi Qingning, as the eldest miss of Yi family, actually didn't hear about Zerg. Not only Qin Chuan was surprised, Yao Rao also found it somewhat hard to understand. She looked at Yi Qingning and asked, How much do you know about the Great Chaos period? I only know that at that time, our Human Clan and Demon Clan joined hands to fight against a great disaster. But as for the specifics of this disaster, I only knew it was Zerg after hearing you talk about it. Yi Qingning looked at Yao Rao with a complicated expression and said, Maybe my grandfather knows about this matter, but I really don't know. Just a moment ago, when she heard Yao Rao and Qin Chuan talking about Zerg, Yi Qingning was extremely shocked in her heart because she had read books and poems since childhood, so she had a very good understanding of human race's history. It could be said that she had it at her fingertips, but among those books she had read, there was no record of Zerg. According to common sense, this should not have happened. Even if they wanted to hide the truth from the public, they should not hide it from the eldest young lady of the Yi family. How interesting. Yarao looked at Yi Qingning with pondering expression. Your human clan's big clans don't know anything about Zerg, so don't expect other small clans to know anything about him. So to say, I want to join hands with your human clan to investigate Zerg, but that is just wishful thinking. Their demon clan and human clan had just had a great war and killed many human clan. If human clan also knew something about Zerg, then perhaps there was a possibility of joining hands between the two clans. But now human clan didn't have any impression about Zerg, so wanted to make human clan realize the threat of Zerg to them and join hands to fight against Zerg was basically impossible. Even if Qin Xuan came forward, he might not be able to organize everyone again. Qin Xuan also thought about the matter that Yarao thought about. For thousands of years, human clan and demon clan were like fire and water, so it was very difficult to make human clan believe demon clan's one-sided statement and fight against Zerg together with demon clan. Qin Xuan didn't think that he had such prestige to make everyone obedient. If you don't have the help of human clan, what do you plan to do? Qin Xuan seriously looked at Yarao, waiting for Yarao's answer. Yarao chuckled, then indifferently said, very simple, our demon clan will do it ourselves. After leaving unfettered secret realm, our demon clan will withdraw our forces from the battlefield and focus on defending the places where Zerg might appear in demon clan. As for whether you human clan will continue to live your peaceful days or actively prepare for war, that's your own matter. We demon clan can't control you. Originally, Yarao thought that human clan and demon clan would join hands again one day, but now it seems that there was no such possibility. They still had to make preparations to face Zerg alone in advance. Qin Xuan could easily hear the ridicule in Yarao's words towards their human clan, but he had no way to refute because they really didn't know anything about Zerg. In terms of sealing the information about Zerg, human clan was really too strict. Zerg, I know. At this time, a dirty figure with a broken arm appeared in front of everyone and looked at the demon clan with sharp eyes. Seeing the sudden appearance of Su Kuang, Qin Xuan was somewhat surprised. Your arm is minor injury. Su Kuang walked over to Qin Xuan's side and sat down, then said to Qin Xuan, time is pressing. Help me press my arm first. While speaking, Su Kuang took out a bottle of transparent gel from his storage ring, then pointed his left arm at the place where it was about to break and said to Qin Xuan, I'll have to trouble you to apply this thing to the broken part. Qin Xuan took the gel and asked curiously, what is this? This is intermittent condensation liquid. Yi Qingning, who was standing at the side, said to Qin Xuan, it's a specialty of deity Sword Villa, a miraculous medicine used to connect broken limbs. Hearing Yi Qingning's words, Qin Xuan was extremely surprised. He did not expect deity Sword Villa to have such a specialty. The intermittent condensation liquid is only effective for injuries that have been disconnected for less than 10 hours. It won't have any effect after that. Su Kuang glanced at Qin Xuan and said, are you going to delay it until it's ineffective before helping me? Hearing this, Qin Xuan grinned and swiftly began to apply the gel for Su Kuang. As he applied, he asked, you said you know about the Zergs? Su Kuang nodded and said to Qin Xuan, my deity, Sword Villa's sword god, Su Inha died in the hands of Zerg. Hearing Su Kuang mention the famous Su Inha, everyone was shocked. Everyone had heard of this sword god's name. Back then, Su Inha's death was extremely strange. No one knew the inside story, but they did not expect him to die in the hands of Zerg. That year, sword god Su Inha was exploring the mysterious ruins of the universe. He encountered a powerful enemy. After a life and death battle, he broke out of the encirclement and dragged his seriously injured body back to deity Sword Villa, leaving behind his last words. At that time, we announced to the public that Sword God had fallen because he encountered an unknown strong enemy. Many people thought that Sword God had encountered the Demon King at that time. They thought that only the Demon King could have severely injured Sword God, who was at the peak of his power. However, the people of deity Sword Villa knew very well that the mysterious strong enemy that severely injured Sword God was the Insect Clan. Hearing this, Yao Rao deeply looked at Su Kuang and asked, "Why did your deity's sword villa hide this information for so many years?" "How would I know?" Su Kuang raised his eyebrows. "I wasn't born at that time." Hearing Su Kuang's answer, Yao Rao was speechless. "Then how do you know about this matter?" Qin Chuan curiously asked. "Have you ever thought of announcing this matter?" Su Kuang shook his head. "I don't know the specifics. I know about this matter because my teacher told me." Chapter 430. It seems you humans have always kept the matter related to Zerg a secret. Yao Rao meaningfully looked at Su Kuang, then said to Qin Chuan, "I don't think we can count on you. Let his demon race go alone." Su Kuang slightly frowned, then said to Yao Rao, "You don't believe what I said?" "I believe, but what about the others?" Yao Rao chuckled. "Will the higher-ups of your deity's sword villa allow you to speak about the matter related to sword god Su Inha privately? Since your deity sword villa has always concealed this matter, then it shows that the higher-ups of your human race are keeping the matter related to Zerg a secret. Not to mention whether anyone will believe your words. Even if someone believes it, do you think they will be willing to risk their life to fight against Zerg who is stronger than us demon race?" Facing all kinds of questions raised by Yao Rao, Qin Chuan and Su Kuang were speechless, especially Su Kuang. He clearly knew how difficult it was for them to gather these 500 people. Now the morale of the army was already slack, and people were fleeing in all directions. Wanting to gather these people again was absolutely a very difficult matter. Perhaps even if they were barely able to gather these people, they would only be some stragglers and basically wouldn't be able to display much fighting strength. In the outside world, Foundation establishment cultivators might be relatively powerful existences, but in this carefree secret realm, Foundation establishment cultivators were merely the most ordinary members, and their lives were as fragile as grass. "Qin Chuan, remember, today I let you go." Yao Rao deeply looked at Qin Chuan and said, "The debt of secretly kissing me, I will settle it later." Hearing Yao Rao mentioning the old matter, the expression on Qin Chuan's face couldn't help but become somewhat embarrassed. He scratched his head and said, "At that time, since you were conscious, why didn't you stop me? You are a big man, and I am a weak woman. If I stopped you, what would I do if your bestial nature flared up?" Yao Rao looked wronged. "So I could only swallow my anger and let you take advantage of me." Hearing Yao Rao's words, the expression of several holy sons standing in the vicinity became strange. "Weak woman? Bestial nature flared up?" Perceiving the change in expression of several people beside her, Yao Rao lightly raised her eyebrows and immediately became arrogant again. "What? Do you have an opinion on what I said?" No. Myriad Snake promptly shook her head. "Princess Yao Rao, let's make preparations and look for Zerg's traces." Myriad Snake and other holy sons, as well as other holy sons of different clans, and they knew that Zerg was a very big threat to their demon races, so in the face of the crisis that had already appeared, they would absolutely not shrink back. Hearing the Snake Dowager's words, Qin Chuan's expression became even more gloomy. In comparison, the so-called elite geniuses of the human race were far too lacking. From strength to wisdom to experience and courage, they were inferior to the Yao race in every aspect. That Su Kuang clenched his teeth, turned to look at Qin Chuan, and said, "We must do something. Investigate the origin of Zerg. I understand what you're saying, but before we do that, we need to wait for him to wake up." Qin Chuan pointed at Chun Changxing, who was still unconscious, and said with a sigh, "We don't know anything yet, so I'm afraid we will encounter danger if we act rashly." At this time, the feather inserted in Chun Changxing's head had already turned black, and soon it would completely turn black. At that time, Chun Changxing would wake up, and they would also be able to understand more about Zerg. While everyone was silently waiting for Chun Changxing to wake up, Yao Rao slowly walked to Yi Qingning's side. She looked at the veil on Yi Qingning's face and said in a low voice, "Are you sad because of Qin Chuan's promise to me?" Yi Qingning pursed her lips and said, "Why should I be sad? Don't deceive yourself, you like him. I can see it." Yao Rao looked at Yi Qingning with subtle expression, The things that happen one after another have caused a big impact on your heart. The appearance of Qin Xuan standing in front of you at that time, I'm afraid you will never forget it in this lifetime. Yi Qingning's calm expression finally collapsed under the provocation of Yao Rao's words. She turned to look at Yao Rao and asked, "What do you want to do?" "I don't want to do anything. I just think you don't deserve him." Yao Rao deeply looked at Yi Qingning. "In addition to beauty, you have nothing. And I, not only have beauty, I also have formidable strength and outstanding wisdom." "You?" Yi Qingning looked at Yao Rao with complicated expression. "You like him?" Yao Rao didn't directly answer Yi Qingning's question. She lightly smiled and said, "I have never liked anyone, and I will never easily like a person. So, why are you targeting me?" Yi Qingning was puzzled. Since Yao Rao didn't like Qin Xuan, why was she targeting her? Facing Yi Qingning's puzzlement, Yao Rao faintly smiled and said, "If I can't get him, I don't want others to get him. You really are a seductress." Yi Qingning took a deep breath. "However, there are some things that I won't easily give up once I set my mind on it." "He promised me. Have you forgotten?" Yao Rao looked at Yi Qingning. "He is a person who will keep his promise. I believe in my vision." "You are right. He will indeed keep his promise and won't marry me." Yi Qingning lightly bit her lips. "But what if I don't want to marry him and only want to be his woman? Do you think with my appearance, I am qualified to be his lover who doesn't pester him?" Yi Qingning could swear to the heavens that she had never said such unrestrained words before, nor had she ever thought of such shameful thing. But today, facing Yao Rao's aggressive attitude, she really couldn't bear it anymore. She must fight back. Just as Yi Qingning had expected, after hearing her answer, Yao Rao's expression couldn't help but become startled. Then this startled expression turned gloomy. "Qin Xuan, don't talk," he woke up. Yao Rao hadn't finished speaking when she was interrupted by Qin Xuan. The unconscious Chun Chongqing had finally woken up. Chun Chongqing had just opened his eyes, and seeing Qin Xuan and Su Kuang in front of him, he was stunned for a moment. Then recalling what happened before he lost consciousness, he immediately anxiously said to Qin Xuan, "Boss, quickly go and say by you and others, they are in danger now. Don't worry." Qin Xuan calmed Chun Chongqing down. "You speak slowly, we'll talk while walking. Tell me everything you know about Zerg. Don't miss any details." The matter of saving people was of course urgent, but no matter how urgent it was, they must first collect information. Chapter 431. On the barren land, huge rocks were scattered all over the place, forming a stone forest. In the middle of the stone forest, there were two huge monsters with many legs that were covered in carapaces that were looking for something. Their compound eyes revealed a strange and evil gaze. "Kacha, kacha!" The hard and sharp insect legs stepped on the ground, forming deep pits. In a situation where no one could see, countless insect eggs were buried deep in the ground, quietly waiting for the opportunity to hatch. In the crevice between the ground and the boulder, a slim figure in dark blue jeans and a purple shirt was carefully curled up. A pair of lively eyes were slightly nervous as they looked at the pitch-black insect leg outside the crevice. She could clearly see insect eggs flowing down the insect leg and into the pit one after another. Lu Zi swore that this was the first time she was in such a sorry state. When she found the treasure land, she thought that she would be able to obtain a great opportunity. She never thought that a great disaster would befall her in the blink of an eye. If it was not for Baiyu risking her life to save her, she would have already been a dead person. At this moment, everyone was fleeing in all directions. She did not know where she was or how the others were doing. The feeling of being alone in a dangerous situation caused her to be on the verge of collapse. She could go crazy at any moment. "Kacha, kacha!" Once the sacred beetle was far away, LVZ let out a long sigh of relief. She had temporarily escaped this calamity. Once the sacred beetle was far away, she could stealthily come out and escape the pursuit of these foreign races. When Lu Zi let out a sigh of relief, she did not see that the insect eggs buried by the sacred beetle were hatching one by one. The small insects were stretching their bodies and crawling out of the pit. When she could no longer hear the sound of the sacred beetle, Lu Zi began to observe the situation outside. She wanted to quickly leave this crevice that made her feel suffocated. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A very light hissing sound mixed with the wind entered Lu Zi's ears, causing Lu Zi to instantly become nervous. She pricked up her ears and listened carefully. She discovered that it was not the sound of the sacred beetle returning. Lu Zi narrowed her eyes and looked at the tiny milky white worm that was slowly crawling out of the pit. She seemed to have thought of something, and the expression on her face suddenly turned to one of extreme terror. At the same time, a series of rapid snapping sounds came from afar and rapidly approached Lu Zi. Hearing the familiar footsteps, Lu Zi didn't hesitate. She quickly jumped out of the gap and ran forward without looking. At this moment, Lu Zi did not need to look back, as she could clearly smell the stench that was close by. As long as she dared to stop running, even if it was only for a moment, her back would definitely be pierced by those sharp insect legs, and she would be nailed to the ground. When the shadow of the Grim Reaper loomed over her heart, LVZ realized that she was so reluctant to part with this world. Grandpa Chinchuan, Kacha Kacha, Dong. A violent collision sound echoed and sand flew everywhere. The sacred beetle that was about to catch up to Lu Zi had its head smashed by an iron fist. It didn't even have time to cry out before it lost its life forever. Plop! Lu Zi fell to the ground and turned her head to look behind her. When she saw the familiar figure standing on top of the sacred beetle's corpse, she couldn't help but cry. Chinchuan. Hearing Lu Zi's hysterical shout, Chinchuan shook his right hand and smiled at Lu Zi. Sorry, I'm late. Boss, there's still one behind. If you want to act cool, can you wait a bit? Following Chun Chongxing's words, an even bigger sacred beetle suddenly appeared behind Chinchuan. It raised its leg and ruthlessly stabbed at Chinchuan. Clang! A spotlessly white feather appeared behind Chinchuan and perfectly blocked the attack of the sacred beetle's leg. At the same time, this seemingly weak feather suddenly erupted with a terrifying power, causing the sacred beetle to fall to the ground with a loud bang. When Chinchuan wanted to kill this second sacred beetle, he unexpectedly discovered that this sacred beetle was already dead. Looking at that neat cut line, Chinchuan couldn't help but look at Yaorao and asked, "What's the origin of that feather of yours? It's so strong and so sharp." Having heard what was said, Yaorao smiled. "What? You want to know about my magic weapon so that you can target me? You misunderstood." Chinchuan chuckled. "I'm just curious." Chinchuan. When Chinchuan and Yaorao were chatting, Lu Zi had already crawled up from the ground, then quickly ran towards Chinchuan and threw herself into the bosom of Chinchuan. Chinchuan hugged the dirty Lu Zi and comforted her with a smile. "It's okay. Everything is over. Now you're very safe. I thought I would never see you again." Lu Zi tightly hugged Chinchuan, as if she was afraid Chinchuan would disappear in the next moment. "How can that be? We are both living well. How can we not see each other?" Chinchuan gently stroked Lu Zi's soft hair and comforted her again. "It's all over. I will protect you from now on." Not far away, Yaorao looked at Chinchuan and Lu Zi, who were tightly hugging each other, and her smile suddenly froze on her face. Yi Qingning, who was standing beside her, faintly smiled and said to Yaorao, "Lu Zi and Chinchuan are high school classmates and also college classmates. Both of them have been living together since the beginning of college. You can guess what is their relationship? What does it have to do with me?" Yaorao coldly snorted. In her heart, she was clearly unhappy. At this time, Chen Chongqing also ran over and happily wanted to hug Lu Zi, but was ruthlessly rejected by Lu Zi. But Chen Chongqing didn't feel embarrassed. After all, he was already accustomed to this kind of thing. Now that Lu Zi is all right, we should quickly go and look for Bai Yu and Long Xiao. Chen Chongqing said to Chinchuan, "The earlier we find everyone, the earlier we can be at ease." Chinchuan nodded his head. His original intention was to immediately set out to look for Bai Yu and Lu Zi, and he didn't want to delay even a little bit. Who knows what kind of unacceptable consequences would occur if they were to delay here for a while. Wait a minute. Bai Feng, who was in charge of aerial surveillance, looked towards the distance with dignified expression, then said to everyone on the ground, "There is a powerful aura in front of us, and it is quickly approaching us." Hearing Bai Feng, everyone subconsciously looked towards the direction pointed by Bai Feng. At first, no one discovered anything, but after a moment, they could feel an extremely powerful aura appearing within their perception range. The complexion of demon race's people became dignified, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. Qin Chuan, Lu Zi, and Chen Changxing's face, however, exposed a happy smile. Chapter 432. Don't panic, she's one of us. Qin Chuan smiled and said to Bai Feng, "She's our friend." Hearing Qin Chuan's words, Bai Feng looked at Qin Chuan in shock. He didn't think that other than a genius like Qin Chuan, there would be another genius that wasn't inferior to Qin Chuan. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, a white figure approached from afar at lightning speed. Whoosh! White hair fluttered in the wind as the petite figure stopped in front of Qin Chuan. She stared at Qin Chuan, and her cold face gradually became gentle. "We finally meet." Qin Chuan looked at the familiar face and faintly smiled. "It's great that you're fine." "Ha! Now that Bai Yu is also fine, there's only Long Shao left." Chen Changxing laughed heartily. At this moment, there was nothing that made him happier than seeing his companions return safely. However, this time, Chen Changxing learned his lesson and didn't excitedly go forward to have sex with Bai Yu. Being rejected once was enough. If he was rejected again, that would be too embarrassing. Hearing Chen Changxing mention Long Shao, Bai Yu pursed her lips and said, "I went to look for Long Shao, but I couldn't find him." Hearing Bai Yu's words, the smile on Chen Changxing's face quickly disappeared, and he frowned. Bai Yu went to look for Long Shao, but couldn't find him. Either Long Shao ran far enough and hid deep enough, or Long Shao had encountered an accident. If it was the former, then it was fine. If it was the latter, then Long Shao was in danger. "Boss, if we go look for him now, we might still be able to make it." Chen Changxing looked at Qin Chuan with an uneasy expression. He didn't know why he had an ominous feeling in his heart. "Don't panic." Qin Chuan looked at Chen Changxing and asked Bai Yu, "How did you escape the pursuit of the sacred beetles?" "These things are called sacred beetles?" Bai Yu looked at the sacred beetle's corpse and replied, "In the beginning, there were too many of them and I couldn't deal with them. After we split up, there were only 2 sacred beetles chasing me, so I killed them." Hearing Bai Yu's reply, no one was surprised. Bai Yu's strength was tyrannical and was not any weaker than Qin Chuan. Being able to kill 2 sacred beetles was a very normal matter. As for the demons, they weren't surprised because they had personally sensed just how powerful and blazing Bai Yu's aura was. 2 sacred beetles were naturally nothing to her. To be honest, I also tried to kill the sacred beetle, but I wasn't its opponent at all. If it wasn't for someone telling me where Boss was, I would have died. Chen Changxing bitterly smiled. It was truly infuriating to compare oneself to others. Bai Yu could easily deal with 2 sacred beetles, while he had to rely on Qin Chuan's help to deal with 1 sacred beetle. The difference was too big. The most important thing right now is to find Long Shao as soon as possible. Qin Chuan looked at everyone with dignified expression. "No matter if Long Shao is alive or dead, we must find her. You don't need to be so anxious now." At this time, Yao Rao slowly walked over and stood in front of Qin Chuan. She looked at Bai Yu with subtle expression and asked, "Are you not human?" Bai Yu indifferently looked at Yao Rao. "I don't want to answer your question." Facing Bai Yu's indifference, Yao Rao was stunned for a moment, but soon she gently smiled and said, "Truly a little girl with character." "Yao Rao, just now you told us not to be anxious. What do you mean?" Qin Chuan took the initiative to interrupt. "Could it be that you have a good method? Now, we don't know the whereabouts of your companion. There are only 3 possibilities. First, he is still fleeing. Second, he is already dead. Third, he has been captured alive." Yao Rao indifferently said, "None of us know where your companion has run to. Looking for him now is tantamount to looking for a needle in a haystack. Not to mention wasting time, it also won't have any good effect. In my opinion, We should directly go to that treasure land to look for Zerg's trace and investigate the situation of Zerg. If your companion is captured, then we can certainly find clues and formulate a rescue plan. Hearing Yaorao's proposal, Qinchuan slightly frowned. After pondering for a moment, he said, "What if we directly go to that treasure land and happen to miss the best opportunity to rescue Long Xiao?" As if Yaorao already knew that Qinchuan would ask this question, she indifferently said, "Simple. We can launch a feint attack on Zerg and let Zerg feel a certain degree of threat. This way they will inevitably recall their sacred beetles. This can also be considered as helping your friend out." "Boss, her proposal is not bad," Chen Changxing seriously said to Qinchuan. "With Long Xiao's strength, even if he can't kill the sacred beetles, he should be able to protect himself." Among them, Long Xiao's strength was second only to Qinchuan and Baiyu. So dealing with one sacred beetle shouldn't be a big problem. Even if he couldn't win against two sacred beetles, he should be able to protect himself. Qinchuan pondered for a moment, then looked at Baiyu and asked, "What is your opinion?" Baiyu asked Qinchuan, "What do you think?" Qinchuan seriously thought for a moment, then said, "We will split into two. Baiyu, you will be responsible for looking for Long Xiao. The rest of us will go to that treasure land to investigate Zerg's situation. We will always be near that treasure land, waiting for you to come back." At this time, Lu Zi's emotions had already stabilized. When she heard Qinchuan's words, she immediately suggested, "There is a cave about 400 kilometers away from the treasure land. We have rested there before. Baiyu should remember, right? We will wait for you there." Baiyu nodded and said, "All right, it's settled then." After saying this, Baiyu turned around and prepared to leave to continue looking for Long Xiao. "Wait a moment." Qinchuan suddenly called out to Baiyu. He took out a brocade box from his storage ring and gave it to Baiyu. "If you encounter any danger that you can't deal with, open the box and take out the things inside to throw at the enemy. It will save your life." Hearing Qinchuan's words, Baiyu looked down at the brocade box in Qinchuan's hand and shook her head. "You will have to face Zerg directly. It will be more dangerous. You should keep it." "I still have a lot of these things." Qinchuan smiled and forced the brocade box into Baiyu's hands. "You will be in the most danger if you act alone." Baiyu was silent for a moment, then she no longer refused. She carefully put the brocade box away and said to Qinchuan, "I'm leaving." Baiyu embarked on the path to look for Long Xiao. Everyone was also preparing to head to Zerg's treasure land. However, no one noticed that in the stone forest, countless tiny insects were devouring everything they came into contact with. Whether it was rocks or weeds, they did not let anything go. As they devoured more and more things, these tiny insects gradually turned into mini sacred beetles, emitting a strange and evil aura. Chapter 433. That's where the treasure is. Chen Changxing pointed at a forest in front of them. The forest was not very big, only about 4 or 5 mu in size. With the vision of a cultivator, they could almost see through the forest at a glance. "That's the treasure? It doesn't look like anything special." Fei Peng frowned as he looked at the forest and asked, "Could it be that Zerg took all the treasure?" "That's not the case. The treasure isn't above ground, it's underground." Chen Changxing explained to everyone, "We were crossing this forest before and found a cave in the middle of the forest. Out of curiosity, we went in to take a look. Only then did we realize that there was a hidden treasure under the forest." "Speaking of treasure, what's in there?" Bai Feng's sharp eyes had already discovered the location of the cave Chen Changxing was talking about. Such a conspicuous cave shouldn't have been discovered by you guys only now. We didn't go deep into the treasure. We only found some 1,000-year-old herbs in the periphery. Just as we were about to go in deeper to investigate, Zerg appeared. As for why no one else found this treasure, I also find it strange. When he first discovered the cave, Chen Changxing had joked that it might be the lair of some wild beast. He had never thought that such an exposed cave would actually hide a treasure trove. Look carefully at the plants in the forest. At this moment, Yi Qingning frowned slightly and reminded everyone to be careful not to get too close to the forest. After Yi Qingning's reminder, Everyone carefully observed the bushes and trees in the forest. Soon, they found a large number of black beetles in every corner of the forest. These beetles were definitely not creatures that originally existed in the forest. This should be Zerg's detection method. Yi Qing Ning guessed. As soon as someone gets close to the forest, these beetles will immediately alert Zerg. If you didn't remind me, I wouldn't have noticed. Qin Chuan narrowed his eyes. These Zerg are so cautious in placing so many beetles in the forest. Does it mean that they aren't strong enough? Or are they doing something important that they can't be disturbed? Qin Chuan's guess makes sense. Lu Zi glanced at Qin Chuan and said, I suspect that they're trying to stabilize the portal and allow more Zerg to teleport over. What's the reason? Su Kuang looked at Lu Zi. It can't be a groundless guess. Lu Zi turned to look at Su Kuang and explained, I remember clearly that other than the large sacred beetles, there were also dozens of humanoid Zerg that were teleported to this treasure land. If they had attacked together, we might not have had the chance to escape. However, they didn't attack and chose to let the sacred beetles attack us. At that time, I only had time to escape, so I didn't think too much about it. Now that I think about it, those Zerg were clearly maintaining the stability of the portal, so they couldn't do anything. Yes, Lu Zi is right. Chun Changxing also thought about it, and immediately said to everyone, those Zerg were standing beside the portal and didn't move an inch. They only let the sacred beetles attack us. It's not that they didn't want to attack, but they couldn't. So to say, perhaps the only enemy we need to face now is the sacred beetles? Su Kuang deeply looked at Qin Chuan and asked, what do you think? Qin Chuan looked at Su Kuang, then looked at Yao Rao and asked, do you have any way to investigate the situation inside the cave? We don't. Yao Rao shook her head and said, we have Bai Feng who is good at collecting information. Bai Feng's eyesight is extraordinary, but he doesn't have the ability to see through things. Let me do it. At this time, Lu Zi suddenly stood up and said to Qin Chuan, I am an illusion array master, so I am good at collecting information. This matter is most suitable for me. Are you sure you can do it? Yao Rao looked at Lu Zi with distrustful eyes. If you really have this ability, then how could you be chased by those sacred beetles? Lu Zi shot a glance at Yao Rao and explained, at that time, things happened suddenly, so I didn't have the chance to inscribe the array. Qin Chuan looked at Lu Zi and seriously asked, are you really confident? Believe me. Lu Zi looked at Qin Chuan. I won't take the risk with my life, and I also won't let you take the risk with me. Okay, then you do it. Qin Chuan finally decided to believe Lu Zi and let Lu Zi give it a try. In the verdant woods, countless black beetles were strolling in every corner of the woods. Whether it was the soil or the treetops, they didn't let go of anything. Under the strict inspection of these beetles, a burst of white fog slowly floated into the woods from outside. Facing this white fog, the beetles didn't have any reaction. They were extremely calm. Inside the fog, an illusory figure was slowly moving forward. Her feet didn't touch the ground, rather stepped on the white fog, as if she was floating. It could be said that this scene was extremely strange. At a distant place, when everyone saw that the white fog had penetrated deep into the woods but didn't cause any abnormal movement of the beetles, their nervous mood also relaxed. Lu Zi is really a natural intelligence worker. Yi Qingning sighed and said, at that time in the arena, I didn't see any characteristic of her, but now it seems I underestimated her. Indeed. Su Kuang nodded his head and agreed. If I didn't see Lu Zi walking into that fog with my own eyes, then I also wouldn't be able to perceive the existence of someone inside this fog. This fog is mainly used to confuse those beetles with low intelligence. If facing an ordinary person, then the appearance of this fog will arouse their vigilance. Qin Chuan looked at the fog that was gradually disappearing into the woods, then said in a low voice, if it is foggy weather, then Lu Zi will absolutely become the most frightening existence. Hee. Yao Rao sneered, I have Tian fan in my hand. No matter if it is fog or heavy rain, with a wave of my hand, everything will disappear from me. Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan shot a glance at Yao Rao. So your feather fan is called Tian fan. It sounds very good. Wan Shi, who was standing behind Yao Rao, looked at Qin Chuan, then coldly said, Tianyi fan is my demon race's most valuable treasure. I advise you not to think about it. Be careful not to get yourself into trouble. Everyone quiet down a bit. Baifeng suddenly said, that fog has already entered the cave. We had better be on full alert to guard against any accident. Hearing Baifeng's words, everyone looked towards the distant woods and silently prayed that Lu Zi wouldn't have an accident. Chapter 434. When a mist drifted into the cave, it slowly dissipated. Lu Zi, who was hidden in the mist, maintained her illusory figure as she quietly walked into the depths of the cave. The cave was extremely quiet. There was almost no sound at all. Lu Zi was extremely nervous in such a quiet atmosphere. She carefully touched the wall and walked to the other end of the cave. A herb garden came into view. Under the light of the huge crystal ball, the entire herb garden was abnormally bright. The ground was clean and tidy. There were no signs that the herbs had been picked. It was almost exactly the same as when they first discovered it. This made Lu Zi even more certain that Zerg must not leave the teleportation channel. Otherwise, there was no reason for them to leave so many precious herbs lying around. Lu Zi quietly squatted at the entrance of the cave. After a long time, she did not see anyone patrolling the area. This made Lu Zi realize that Zerg was very confident in the beetles they placed outside for scouting. They did not place any more security measures in the herb garden. After thinking about this, Lu Zi boldly took a step forward and walked out of the cave into the herb garden. The herb garden was also very quiet. Lu Zi was much bolder than before. She walked along the small path in the middle of the herb garden. Soon, she reached the end of the herb garden and arrived at the cave below the herb garden. It was also the place where Zerg's teleportation channel appeared. A huge whirlpool slowly rotated above the cave, emitting a shocking energy wave. It was as dazzling as the starry sky. Looking at the huge whirlpool in front of her, Lu Zi once again became cautious. Because this was Zerg's teleportation channel, there must be Zerg's warriors nearby guarding it. Just as Lu Zi thought, under the teleportation channel, there were 8 figures, some tall and some petite, standing there with their hands in a lifting motion. They were constantly injecting energy into the channel to maintain its stability. Beside these 8 figures, there were 2 figures standing there. However, they were not doing anything. Obviously, these 2 figures' job was to protect the 8 Zerg's warriors. Other than these 10 Zerg's warriors, Lu Zi did not see any other Zerg's warriors. After carefully observing for a moment and confirming that there were no other Zerg's warriors, she quietly retreated. At this moment, the Zerg's warriors suddenly whispered to each other. However, Lu Zi could not understand a single word they said. Lu Zi stopped. She quietly and patiently memorized every word that the Zerg warriors said. After the 2 Zerg's warriors quieted down, she turned around and left again. It's coming out, it's coming out. Chen Chongqing looked at the fog slowly floating out of the forest and couldn't help but shout loudly. At this time, everyone who had been paying attention to the forest also saw the appearance of the fog. This meant that Lu Zi had completed her task of gathering information and safely retreated. Under everyone's gaze, the fog quickly dissipated after leaving the forest and reaching a safe area. A blurry figure quickly ran toward them and gradually became clear. Qinchuan looked at Lu Zi, who was running in front of him, and asked with concern, "Were we discovered?" "No." Lu Zi shook her head and said, "I've carefully investigated. There are a total of 10 Zerg's warriors in the treasure land. 8 of them are maintaining the stability of the teleportation channel, and the other 2 are on guard. However, they are very confident in the beetles in the forest, so the internal security is very lax." Hearing Lu Zi's words, Qinchuan slightly frowned and asked, "Can you confirm their strength?" "No need to confirm. Their strength is certainly similar to Foundation Establishment or Demon General Realm." Yao Rao glanced at Qinchuan and said, "Don't forget where we are. The restriction of unfettered secret territory won't be particularly kind to anyone." I was actually negligent about this point. Qinchuan suddenly realized, since that is the case, then let's directly kill our way in. I have never been afraid of opponents of the same realm. Originally, Qinchuan was still worried whether the strength of these Zerg's warriors would be too strong or not. But now that he had determined that the strength of these Zerg warriors was comparable to theirs, there was no need for them to hide. They could directly kill those Zerg warriors. If Zerg is really as weak as you think, do you think we demon race need to join hands with you human race to fight against Zerg? Yaorao coldly snorted. The actual fighting strength of Zerg's warriors is far beyond their realm. In other words, Zerg's warriors can burst out with the fighting strength of Gold Core realm. Do you think you can block them? Are you sure? Qinchuan frowned, so to say we don't have any chance of winning. Qinchuan was not afraid of opponents of Foundation Establishment realm, but facing Gold Core realm, unless Qinchuan was tired of living, it was absolutely impossible for him to take the initiative to attack. Not necessarily. Yaorao pursed her lips and said, I am talking about the elites of Zerg's warriors. These Zerg's warriors may not necessarily possess such formidable strength, but they still can't be underestimated. We can't attack by force, we can only outsmart them. Just a moment ago, Lu Zi also said that among 10 Zerg's warriors, 8 of them are maintaining the stability of transmission channel. So we should lure out those 2 Zerg warriors, then besiege them together and end the battle quickly. After that we can go and look for the remaining 8 Zerg warriors. Speaking till here, Yaorao slightly paused, then continued. But there is still one point. We are not clear whether those 8 Zerg warriors can fight or not, and how much power they have consumed to maintain the stability of transmission channel. Do you understand what I am trying to say? Hearing this, everyone nodded their head in succession. The meaning of Yaorao was very clear. They were not sure about the specific situation of those 8 Zerg warriors. If they recklessly rushed in, perhaps an extremely desperate battle would break out, and victory or defeat would become unknown. And this was the situation that they absolutely didn't want to face. We need certainty of victory. Yaorao looked towards Qinchuan. This certainty is on you. Hearing Yaorao, Qinchuan couldn't help but stared blankly for a moment. Me? Yaorao nodded her head, and when she was about to say something, Lu Zi suddenly interrupted. Oh, that's right, I also eavesdropped on the conversation between Zerg's warriors, but I didn't understand, so I barely remembered some pronunciation. Don't know if you can recognize it or not. Among everyone present, only Demon Race had come in contact with Zerg, so they understood Zerg. If they could decipher that conversation, perhaps they could find some useful information from it. Chapter 435. Hearing Lu Zi's words, everyone's curiosity was aroused. They all wanted to hear how Zerg's warriors communicated with each other. Under the curious gaze of everyone, Lu Zi recalled the pronunciation of Zerg warriors when they communicated with each other and began to speak a string of inexplicable words. After speaking, she said to everyone, "That's all I can remember. Is there anyone who can understand it?" Facing Lu Zi's question, Fei Peng shook his head. "I have never heard of this language. I don't understand the meaning of it." "Me too." Bai Feng helplessly shook his head. "This is the first time I have heard this language." Seeing several demon races' holy sons shaking their heads, Lu Zi didn't feel surprised. After all, this was the language of different races, so it was normal for demon race to not understand it. Just like in the beginning, there was no way for demon race and human race to communicate with each other. Later in the period of chaos, in order to fight against Zerg, both demon race and human race had no choice but to unify their language, which allowed them to communicate smoothly. Just when everyone was disappointed, Yi Qingning somewhat hesitantly said to everyone, "I seem to have heard similar pronunciation from somewhere, but I am not sure whether it is it or not." Hearing Yi Qingning's words, everyone's eyes couldn't help but lit up. Then they hastily asked, "You can hear it? What does it mean?" Yi Qingning nodded her head, then shook her head and said, "I can only hear a few of them. One of them is wormhole, and the other is 2 hours. Wormhole, 2 hours? Hearing this, everyone fell in a deep thought. After a moment, Lu Zi somewhat hesitantly said, "Is the wormhole they're talking about the transmission channel? Combined with it, Does it mean that after 2 hours, the transmission channel will be stable? Maybe. Yaorao looked at Qinchuan and said, if it is really like that, then we have to act quickly. If they really stabilize the transmission channel, then a large number of Zerg's warriors will be transmitted over, then the situation will certainly not be good. Qinchuan nodded his head and said, we must act as soon as possible. In the treasure land, Ree vigilantly looked all around, paying attention to the wind blowing the grass and the surroundings. After determining that there was no accident, the expression on his face gradually became relaxed. Ree, you are always vigilantly looking all around every 10 minutes. What are you worried about? Kana, standing at the side, smiled, revealing his sharp teeth. We have arranged no less than 10 million scouting insects in the woods. If anyone approaches us, they will certainly be discovered in the first moment. At that time, it's not too late to be vigilant. Kana, a little vigilance is a good thing. Ree said to you, you to me, you. Even if we die 100 times, it won't be enough even if we die 100 times. You're right, but in a place like this, who do you think is our opponent? You to me is to say you as God is, and now is to be exit. By Zerg is to be excreted by Zerg 2s. But it's been a long time. Ree frowned slightly. The sacred beetle hasn't returned yet. You know, Zerg's IQ is not high enough. They always like to dig holes and bury their eggs. Just let them play outside. No one can hurt them here. Kana said indifferently. This is part of our plan, isn't it? Hearing Kana's words, Riku slightly frowned. When he was about to say something, Kana chuckled. Riku, what did I say? It's enough to have a scout insect. You see, an outsider has been discovered the moment he stepped into the woods. At this time, Ree also received information from the scouting insects. He frowned and said, a human and a goblin, they are fighting very fiercely. They are moving towards this direction. We need to stop them. It's not good to let them disturb Aina and the others. Kana glanced at Ree and asked, do you want to go, or should I? Ree thought for a moment and replied, let's go together. Let's get this over with quickly, lest something unexpected happens. Where do you think you're going? In the woods, an angry roar sounded. A tall figure hovered in the air, constantly attacking the figure running on the ground. Goblin power poured out, as if it was free. Come down if you dare. Although the person on the ground looked embarrassed, his mouth was not sparing at all. He cursed the goblin in the sky, while dodging the attacks of the goblin power. The situation was quite bad. Just as the human and demon were about to reach the cave, two tall, pitch-black figures suddenly walked out cave. They wore hard carapaces and had antenna-like antennae on their heads. They had 6 eyes on their faces, making them look extremely strange. These two ugly aliens were Zerg warriors Ree and Kana. As soon as they appeared and saw the figure running on the ground, the expression on their faces quickly became ferocious, and, at the same time, they opened their mouths and let out a sharp hissing sound. This damned bastard killed my baby. I smelled it. Be careful. There's an ambush. Let's retreat. Just as Kana and Ree were about to retreat into the hole, dozens of figures suddenly appeared from all directions and rushed towards them. Whoosh! Yaorao waved a fan in her hand, and a burst of breeze blew. Suddenly, a hurricane appeared at the entrance of the hole, blocking the retreat of Kana and Ree. On the other side, Yi Qingning took out a green jade flute and put it on her lips. Along with a burst of melodious music, the body of Kana and Ree suddenly became somewhat stiff. Qinchuan, who was about to attack, Ree couldn't help but take a glance at Yi Qingning. He didn't expect that Yi Qingning's innate rune was actually the extremely rare sound attribute. Bang! Su Kuang held the sword in his hand, and the sword intent violently chopped on Kana's carapace. Unexpectedly, it was unable to penetrate the carapace and only left a shallow trace. Don't be distracted. After Su Kuang's reminder, Qinchuan immediately launched an attack on Ree. Thunder fighting technique was displayed, and the violent power of thunder surged towards Ree. Although it was unable to penetrate Ree's carapace, but it succeeded in paralyzing Ree's body, causing Ree's movement to become stiff for a short period of time. The moment Ri's movement became stiff, a spotlessly white feather shot out and unexpectedly passed through the tiny gap between the carapace and pierced Ri's forehead. Poochie! The feather penetrated Ri's head, bringing out pitch-black blood. Chapter 436. The moment he saw the feather penetrated Ku's head, Chen Chongqing couldn't help but excitedly shouted, "Success!" But before Chen Chongqing's voice fell, Ku suddenly brandished his fist and ruthlessly bombarded Qinchuan's chest. Caught off guard, Qinchuan was immediately sent flying and ferociously collided with a tree trunk, breaking the tree trunk that was hugged by two people. Seeing this scene, everyone who was originally extremely excited felt as if a bucket of cold water was poured over their head. Who would have thought that after Ku's head was pierced, he actually didn't die? Whoosh! Yao Rao's figure quickly appeared beside Qinchuan. And looking at Qinchuan, who had just crawled up from the ground, she somewhat helplessly said, "Who told you to lower your guard? I did pierce his head, but he won't die so easily." Qinchuan looked at Ku, who was still full of vigor, and asked puzzledly, "What's the situation? Zerg's vitality is far stronger than us human race and demon race. Even if his vital part is hit, he won't die immediately. His vitality will continue to decline slowly for a period of time. If he can get treatment during this process, then he can survive, otherwise he will die." Yao Rao quickly explained to Qinchuan. "As for how long he can persist, I don't know." Hearing Yao Rao's explanation, Qinchuan nodded his head and said, "I know. I will keep an eye on him and won't give him any chance to escape." On the other side, seeing his attack was actually not able to kill Qinchuan, Rika's complexion quickly became unsightly. Then he said to Kanna in sinking voice, "These people have long planned this. We are not their opponent. We must inform them. Then we must inform them first." While fighting with Su Kuang, Kanna took the time to look at the hole in the ground. At this time, the hurricane had completely blocked the hole. Although he hadn't tried it, Kanna could guess that if he rushed into the hurricane, he would be torn to pieces. No matter how strong his carapace was, it couldn't protect him. Ri wanted to say something, but Qinchuan had already pounced on him again. This time, Qinchuan did not have any intention of testing the waters. He directly transformed into his dragon form. Roar! The giant azure dragon roared, waved its dragon claws, and viciously clawed at Heat. Bang! Rika raised his hand to block the dragon claw attack. Qinchuan saw this and immediately spat a mouthful of dragon breath at Riku. However, the effect was minimal. It could not cause much damage to Riku, who was protected by the carapace. Seeing that Riku was so durable, Qinchuan also became angry. He turned around and used the divine dragon tail whip, fiercely whipping Riku's body, making a violent sound. This time, Riku could no longer resist. His body flew out and staggered to the ground. Without waiting for Riku to stabilize his body, Qinchuan rushed over again and spat out a huge dazzling thunderball at Riku. Zalala. The lightning rolled and struck Rik. It penetrated every inch of his body and almost paralyzed him in an instant. At the same time, an extremely thick silver-white iron rod fell from the sky and smashed directly on Rik's head, causing a loud bang. "I don't believe that I can't kill you with this rod." Sun Yu, who had transformed into a golden-haired monkey, shouted angrily, raised his hand and smashed down with the rod again. Kacha! As Sun Yu's second rod fell, a crisp sound of carapace shattering sounded in everyone's ears. Riku's incomparably solid carapace was finally broken. "You deserve to die." Along with a roar, Riku's body that was pressed under the iron rod by Sun Yu suddenly swelled up and turned into a huge pitch-black beetle. Be careful. This is Zerg's innate magical ability. Don't fight him head-on. Not far away, when Yarao saw the change in Riku, she immediately warned Qinchuan and Sun Yu. However, it was still too late. Riku, who had transformed into a beetle, opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of pitch-black liquid towards Sun Yu. Sun Yu was caught off guard and was sprayed directly. He opened his mouth and issued an extremely miserable cry. Ah, it hurts. It hurts so much. Whoosh! Yaorao's figure quickly appeared beside Sun Yu. She raised her hand and waved her fan to get rid of the black liquid on Sun Yu's body. However, the moment she made her move, the hurricane that blocked the hole suddenly dissipated. Kana, who had been paying close attention to the entrance of the hole, immediately repelled Su Kuang and rushed toward the hole the moment he saw the hurricane disappear. However, Fei Peng and Bai Feng appeared at the entrance of the hole at the same time. While blocking the entrance with their huge wings, they also launched an attack on Kana. Sky Peng Phantom, Gale. Fei Peng and Bai Feng attacked at the same time. The Golden Sky Peng Phantom flew in front of Kana in an instant and launched an attack on Kana's spiritual world. At the same time, the gale displayed by Bai Feng also arrived beside Kana and forcibly sent Kana's body flying away from the hole. Although the cooperation of the two prevented Kana from rushing into the hole at the first moment, it also didn't cause too much damage to Kana. Berserk's sword intent slaughter. Su Kuang shouted angrily, waved the berserk sword in his hand, and launched a strong attack on Kana. The sword intent was extremely sharp. Under the persistence of the sword intent, the berserk sword stabbed Kana's chest and successfully pierced through the carapace on Kana's chest, but that was it. It failed to cause more damage to Kana. Get out of the way. A tender voice sounded behind Su Kuang. Su Kuang subconsciously dodged to the side. He saw a huge horse hoof falling from the sky, stepping on the hilt of the berserk sword like Mount Tai. The terrifying power instantly pushed the berserk sword stuck in the carapace in and pierced Kana's chest. Pucci! Kana's face suddenly became ferocious as his chest was severely damaged. He spat out a mouthful of black blood, and then a hissing sound came from his mouth. His body suddenly swelled and turned into a huge black beetle as big as Riku. With Sun Yu's example, Ma Jiawen immediately waved her wings to widen the distance between her and Kana. The black liquid sprayed from Kana's mouth fell on the trunk beside him, and the green tree withered almost instantly and turned into a pile of black ash. Golden Cage Battle Formation. With a furious roar, 6 golden walls suddenly appeared around the frenzied Kana, imprisoning him in an instant. The imprisoned Kana slammed into the cage violently, making banging sounds. Not far away, Chen Changxing's face was pale. He tried his best to maintain the stability of the Golden Cage Battle Formation with spiritual power and shouted at everyone, "I can't hold on for long. Think of a way." Hearing Chen Changxing's roar, everyone didn't know what to do. Who would have thought that dozens of geniuses of the Human Clan and the Beast King Clan were helpless against these 2 Zerg warriors? Chapter 437. What should we do? Lu Zi was somewhat nervous. Facing these 2 Zerg warriors whose fighting strength was far beyond the limit of imagination, she really had no way to deal with them. The illusion formation was simply useless. At a distant place, Qinchuan was entangled with the crazy Riku. Yaorao was helping Sun Yu to get rid of the black mucus on his body, and Su Kuang was fully alert as he stared at the Golden Cage Battle Formation. Without the berserk sword in his hand, his strength was greatly reduced, and whether he could block Cannon, who was about to break out of the cage, was still unknown. Lu Zi. At this time, Yi Qingning, who was not far away, suddenly shouted Lu Zi. She quickly came to the side of Lu Zi, then said to Lu Zi, "Use illusion formation to seal the cave." Lu Zi looked at Yi Qingning with worried expression and said, "I don't know how to seal this kind of illusion formation. Just use that fog from before. I will assist you through sound attack." Yi Qingning looked at Lu Zi and said, "Leave the matter of sealing to me. You just confuse their eyes." Lu Zi also knew that this was not the time to talk nonsense, so she immediately began to inscribe Flying Cloud Array, completely covering the entrance of the cave with fog. After Yi Qingning saw the entrance of the cave was covered, she immediately put the jade flute on her lips and blew it. Along with a burst of decadent sound, everyone present suddenly felt a sense of mental exhaustion. Chun Chongqing was concentrating on maintaining the stability of the golden cage battle formation, but when the indiscriminate sound attack appeared, his tight nerves involuntarily relaxed, causing a flaw to appear in the impregnable golden cage battle formation, which was instantly seized by the crazy cannon and ruthlessly smashed into pieces. Bang! The golden cage battle formation was smashed into pieces. Chun Chongqing's complexion instantly turned pale. Then he spat out a mouthful of scarlet blood and fell to the ground with a dispirited expression. On the other side, Su Kuang brazenly rushed towards Cannon, stretched out his hand and grabbed the berserk sword inserted in Cannon's chest, then suddenly pulled out the berserk sword, and at the same time brandished the sword towards Cannon. Berserk sword intent slaughter. The sharp sword chi under the support of sword intent directly stabbed the wound on Cannon's chest, causing blood to splash out. Hiss hiss hiss. Kana roared. His sharp front leg swept fiercely on Su Kuang's body, sending him flying. He didn't chase after him, but turned his head and rushed toward the entrance of the cave. To Kana's surprise, no one stopped him from rushing towards the entrance of the cave. After arriving at the entrance of the cave, Kana's body rapidly shrank and returned to his normal appearance. Just as he was about to rush into the cave, a golden claw appeared in front of him without any warning and fiercely scratched the wound on his chest. Poochie! The sharp claws pierced through Kana's chest in an instant and tore off a piece of flesh from Kana's chest. Kana was suddenly attacked and immediately let out a scream. Before he could react, countless feathers fell from the sky and bombarded his body like raindrops. The carapace that was on the verge of shattering in the previous battle finally couldn't hold on any longer and cracked. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the blink of an eye, Kana's body was covered with feathers and became bloody. Even so, his vitality was still exuberant, and he was still trying to rush to the entrance of the cave. Dong! Kana's head hit the stone fiercely. The scene in front of him changed, from the entrance of the cave to a solid blue stone. Kana looked at the blue stone in front of him. The expression on his face changed from confusion to anger and then to despair. He couldn't help but let out a very mournful cry. Immediately, he fell to the ground and no longer made a sound. Who would have thought that Kana, who suffered a fatal attack, didn't die from serious injuries, but from anger? Although Kana was no longer breathing, Su Kuang still wasn't sure whether Kana was dead or not. He didn't hesitate to slash at Kana's head. At this moment, Kana suddenly opened his eyes and glared at Su Kuang. He wanted to dodge the sword, but it was too late. Poochie! Without the protection of the carapace, Kana's neck was easily cut off by Su Kuang's sword. Black blood flowed out, emitting a nauseating smell. I thought he really died from anger, but I didn't expect him to fake his death. When Fei Peng saw Kana's head separated from his body, he felt quite frightened. If Su Kuang hadn't really killed Kana with his sword strike, they might have been attacked by Kana and suffered a severe setback. Su Kuang continued to stab Kana's body a few more times. After confirming that Kana was really dead, he breathed a sigh of relief. Luzi looked at Yi Qingning beside her and said, "Your sound attack is very powerful. Your illusion array is not bad either." Yi Qingning pursed her lips slightly. Maybe the two of us are the most suitable partners. Sound attack and illusion array can kill people invisibly. What you said seems to make sense. Luzi looked at Ri and Qin Xuan, who were still fighting on the other side. Let's help him deal with that Zerg first, then we can talk about other things. Yi Qingning nodded her head in agreement and prepared to join hands with Luzi to attack Ri again. However, Ri issued a hysterical roar. A huge scarlet feather pierced through his body and nailed him to the ground. Whoosh! Qin Xuan once again changed back to his human form from the dark blue dragon. He slightly gasped for breath, then turned his head to look at the cold-faced, enchanting Rao, then sat down on the ground. Fighting with heat for a moment, he was really tired to death. Aren't we overestimating ourselves too much? Qin Xuan gasped for breath and said to Yao Rao, "It's just 2 Zerg fighters, and we are already having such a hard time. Wait until we have to deal with the other 8 Zerg fighters. How can we have a little chance of winning?" In Qin Xuan's original plan, They should kill these 2 Zerg fighters as fast as lightning, and then encircle and annihilate the remaining 8 Zerg fighters. But who would have thought that the strength of these 2 Zerg fighters was actually so terrifying? They had almost exhausted all of their strength to barely kill these 2 Zerg fighters. With their current state, encircling and annihilating the remaining 8 Zerg fighters. Wouldn't that be sending sheep to the tiger's den? Yao Rao looked at Qin Xuan and asked, "What do you mean now?" "Nothing." Qin Xuan wryly smiled. "Even if we have to risk our lives, we still have to fight." "Then don't talk nonsense. Let's go quickly." Yao Rao looked at the entrance of the cave, then said in deep voice, "Just now when we were fighting, we made such a big noise, but those 8 Zerg fighters didn't come out to support these 2 guys. This shows that they can't leave the transmission channel. This is an excellent opportunity for us." It could be said that Yao Rao's words hit the bottom of everyone's heart. Although their current state wasn't good, but the state of those 8 Zerg fighters wasn't necessarily any better. Chapter 438. Damn it! What the hell is going on outside? Cook gloomily looked at the entrance of the wormhole. He was extremely angry. Rick and Kana have already gone to solve the problem, but they still haven't come back after so long. They should have encountered some trouble. The petite Senna looked at Cook and said, "Calm down. Don't worry. No one here can be our opponent." "No, Senna, you are wrong." Katesh shook his head. "Rick and Kana are already dead. I can feel that their life aura has disappeared." "Dead?" Senna was somewhat astonished. "How can that be? How can anyone be their opponent in this place?" "I don't know, but I can tell you responsibly that a crisis is coming." Katesh looked at Cook and said, "You are the captain. You make the decision. The wormhole will stabilize in an hour, and at that time our army will be able to enter here." Cook coldly snorted, "Aubrey, Lince, and Numa, you 3 go and deal with the invaders outside. Remember, you must end the battle quickly, and also recall all the sacred beetles we sent out." The 3 Zerg warriors who were named by Cook immediately stopped the transmission of power to the transmission channel. They stretched their muscles and bones, then said to Cook, "Captain, you can rest assured and wait for our good news." In the woods, everyone was seizing every moment to rest and adjust their condition. They were very clear that the battle just now was merely an appetizer. The real battle was yet to come. Yao Rao slowly walked to the side of Qin Xuan, looked at Qin Xuan who was adjusting his breath, and asked, "Are you afraid of death?" Qin Xuan looked at Yao Rao and replied, "I am afraid of death. You're the first person I have ever seen who can frankly admit that he is afraid of death." Yao Rao faintly smiled, then sat down beside Qin Xuan. "You are very special." Qin Xuan lightly raised his eyebrows, then said, "Generally, if a girl says to a boy that you are very special, it is basically equivalent to a confession." Yao Rao chuckled. "You are even more shameless than I imagined. Thank you for your compliment." Qin Xuan chuckled. "You're the one who makes me feel special. You're obviously of noble status, but you're taking the lead. It's admirable." "Honorable status? Why do you think so?" Yao Rao lightly raised her eyebrows. "Because I'm a princess, so I am honorable? I didn't expect you to be this kind of person." "What kind of person am I?" Qin Xuan smiled. "I'm just an ordinary person. Ordinary people can't do the matter of secretly kissing other people." The corner of Yao Rao's mouth rose. "I think it's more like a playboy." Qin Xuan didn't know what to say. Why did she have to bring up that embarrassing thing when they were chatting so nicely? "Now there are only 2 of us here." Yao Rao looked at Qin Xuan with a smile. "No one is paying attention to us." Qin Xuan lightly coughed, looked all around, then somewhat vigilantly looked at Yao Rao and asked, "What do you want to do?" "I want to ask you, last time when you secretly kissed me, why did you only kiss my face and not my lips?" Yao Rao stretched out her finger and lightly pointed at her red lips. "Could it be that my lips are not attractive enough? Or is it that your courage is not big enough? Now I'm in front of you. Do you want to kiss me?" Qin Xuan, rumble, without any warning. The ground suddenly split open, and 3 tall and mighty figures suddenly rushed out from the ground, then brazenly rushed toward Fei, Peng, and Bai Feng who were guarding the entrance of the underground cave. Fei Peng and Bai Feng, who were always on guard, instantly responded. They used their wings to protect themselves while simultaneously shooting out feathers to obstruct the attack of the other party. However, these three Zerg warriors who suddenly rushed out from the ground completely disregarded the threat of the feathers and forcibly rushed toward them. Pucci. Zerg warriors raised their sharp insect legs and instantly pierced through the protection of Fei Peng's wings, directly nailing Fei Peng to the ground. On the other side, Bai Feng was also in the same situation, but he was even more miserable than Fei Peng. His pair of wings were torn off, and blood splashed all over the sky. The severe pain caused by the broken wings made Bai Feng unable to even have the chance to scream and fainted on the spot. At the same time, other people also finally reacted and quickly rushed over to rescue Fei Peng and Bai Feng. Berserk Sword Intent Chaotic Dance. Su Kuang took the lead, holding Berserk's sword in his hand, and brandished it like a whirlwind. Sharp sword chi crisscrossed, and at the same time created a huge threat to the three Zerg warriors, forcing them to stop chasing Fei Peng and Bai Feng, and turn around to face Su Kuang. Clang! Su Kuang's sword chopped on the carapace of Obu's chest, but didn't break the carapace. Instead, it left a deep sword mark on the carapace. Seeing this scene, Su Kuang immediately shouted, "Their carapace is much weaker than the previous two." Hearing Su Kuang's reminder, without demur, Yaorao raised her hand and threw a scarlet feather towards Obu. The feather burned in the air, emitting blazing power fluctuation. "Numa!" Obu roared, and the carapace of Numa, who was standing beside him, fell off and condensed into a round black shield in his hand. Almost at the same time when the shield was formed, the feather also flew over and directly hit the shield. Bang! The feather suddenly exploded, and an astonishing destructive power burst out, but the shield didn't have the slightest bit of damage. Numa hid behind the shield, and before he had time to reveal a proud expression, a burst of air-breaking sound resounded from his side, and Qinchuan's figure flashed like a ghost. Then he raised his hand and ruthlessly bombarded Numa's shoulder with lightning fighting technique. The berserk power of thunder erupted and directly destroyed Numa's shoulder, causing him to scream miserably. Just when Lin Se wanted to save Numa, a silver iron rod fell from the sky and ruthlessly smashed his head, nailing him into the ground like a nail. Berserk Sword Intent Slaughter. At this time, Su Kuang no longer attacked Obu, but turned his spearhead and locked onto the heavily injured Numa. The sharp sword chi pierced towards Numa and cleanly cut off Numa's right arm. That indestructible shield fell to the ground, completely exposing Numa to everyone's sight. Seeing this, Aubrey wanted to save Numa, but a golden wall blocked his way. Golden Cage Battle Formation. Chun Chongqing gritted his teeth. He didn't believe that this guy could be stronger than the previous one. Chi! The berserk sword swept again and stood straight on Numa's neck, chopping off his head. On the other side, Sun Yu's face changed and said to everyone, "Oh no, that guy just now can escape. He escaped." Hearing Sun Yu's words, everyone immediately focused their attention to search for Lin Se's trace. Sure enough, Lin Se had disappeared from their perception range. He should have escaped into the treasure land. Chapter 439. That guy deliberately let you smash him into the ground. He saw the situation was not good, so he wanted to escape. Yaorao gloomily looked at the pothole in the ground. At that time, when those three insectoid fighters had launched their attack from underground, she should have thought that one of them must be an expert in earth escape, but she never thought that a moment of carelessness would actually let one of them escape. Sun Yu anxiously scratched his head and said, "It's my fault, it's my fault." On the other side, Numa had already been dealt with, so Chun Chongqing opened Golden Cage Battle Formation and released Abu. Abu, who was alone, was no match for everyone, so he was beheaded in a short moment. After Aubrey was killed, Su Kuang looked at Qinchuan and said, "The strength of these three insectoid warriors is much weaker than the previous two. I'm guessing it's because they've consumed too much energy to maintain the stability of the teleportation channel. That's why they're so weak. In that case, we should have the strength to catch them all in one fell swoop. Qingchuan frowned, looking at Fei Peng and Bai Feng, then asked Yaorao, how is their situation? Bai Feng has already lost his fighting strength, and Fei Peng is also not optimistic. Yaorao coldly snorted, Zerg, these trash. Wait for me to kill them all. I still have some intermittent condensation liquid here. Don't know if it has any effect on Bai Feng's wings. Su Kuang took out 2 bottles of intermittent condensation liquid and handed it over to Ma Jiawen, who was in the process of examining Bai Feng's injuries. Ma Jiawen looked at the bottles of intermittent condensation liquid in Su Kuang's hand and was slightly stunned for a moment. Then, with complicated expression, she looked at Su Kuang and said, Thank you. After expressing her thanks, Ma Jiawen took the bottles of intermittent condensation liquid from Su Kuang's hand and began to connect Bai Feng's broken wings. Seeing this scene, the expression on Yaorao's face couldn't help but become somewhat pondering. Then, with a smile, she said to Qingchuan, Look at our current affectionate appearance. Who would have thought that not long ago we were risking our lives to kill each other in Little Zhong Mountain? Hearing Yaorao mention the matter of before, the expression on everyone's face became somewhat subtle. Indeed, as Yaorao had said, if it was not because of the sudden appearance of Zerg, perhaps they would still hate each other like fire and water. There's no point in talking about this now. Qingchuan glanced at the entrance of the cave and said to everyone, That guy has escaped. He will definitely alert the Zerg warriors inside. We have to go in before they make the necessary adjustments. Yaorao looked at Qingchuan. You have a plan? Qingchuan shook his head. No plan, only kill. I was too careless. Lince, who had escaped through the ground, had a gloomy look on his face. He had thought that Kana and Ri had died because of their carelessness. After they had launched a sneak attack on the 2 of them, they had thought that victory was in their grasp. However, the strength of their opponents was far beyond their expectations. According to his deduction, only when all of them went up would they be able to win against these opponents. I need to inform the captain as soon as possible. No matter how important it is to maintain the stability of the wormhole, I need to be alive to maintain it. Lince rushed into the cave and looked at the people who were still sending power into the wormhole. She shouted, The enemy is too strong. We are no match for them. Seeing Lince's return and hearing Lince's words, Cook's face instantly became gloomy. He asked, What the hell is going on? There are a lot of enemies, and they are all very strong. After we killed 2 of them, we were still no match for them. Numa was killed. Aubrey was trapped. I saw the situation was not good, so I escaped through the ground. Lince simply narrated the process of the battle. Although escaping was a very shameful thing, but in a life and death situation, how could she care about shame? What did you say? Cook glared at Lince. He absolutely didn't believe that in this special place, there was someone who could defeat their powerful Zerg warriors. Captain, it's true, Lince anxiously said to Cook. I hope that we can immediately interrupt the power transmission to the wormhole and deal with the enemies outside first. That's impossible, Cook coldly said. Once the power transmission is interrupted, the wormhole will disappear within 10 minutes. Which one of you can bear the consequences? But if we lose our lives, we will lose everything, Lince said loudly. As long as we go all out, we can kill them all in less than 10 minutes. Hearing Lince's words, Cook still wanted to say something, but there was a sound of footsteps outside the cave. Hearing this sound, Lince's face immediately changed. She shouted, They are here. Before Lin Se could finish speaking, Qingchuan and the rest appeared at the entrance of the cave. As they stared at the enormous teleportation channel that was emitting a dazzling purple light, everyone could not help but gasp in amazement. Is this their teleportation channel? This is the first time I have seen something like this. Ma Jiawen couldn't help but exclaim. Girls were always easily fascinated by beautiful things. If it wasn't because this was Zerg's teleportation channel, she would have hoped that such a beautiful scenery could exist in this world forever. Sun Yu glanced at Ma Jiawen and said, Have you ever thought that these ugly garbage crawled out from here? Okay, all of you shut up. Yao Rao glanced at several Zerg's warriors inside the cave and said to everyone, "See, they're constantly transmitting power to the teleportation channel. Now we have to interrupt them and then kill them." While Qin Chuan and the others were chatting, Zerg's side was also communicating. Cook looked at the people in front of him and coldly said, "Is the strongest among them." Hearing this, Lindsay looked at Su Kwang and said to Cook, "The human standing at the front with the black sword in his hand is the strongest." In Lindsay's impression, Su Kwang was once 1 against 3, and he was not afraid to face them. Now, he was standing in the middle position, so naturally he was the strongest. Senna, Band, you two continue to be responsible for maintaining the stability of the wormhole. The rest of you, follow me and kill all of them." Cook shouted coldly and immediately stopped the transmission of power to the wormhole. He slightly exerted force on his feet, and his huge body flew out like a cannonball straight towards Su Kwang. The moment Cook made his move, everyone also immediately reacted. Su Kwang was not going to back down. He held his sword and faced Cook head-on. The sword chi was raging, and it did not distinguish between friend and foe at all. On the other side, Yi Qingning and Lu Zi partnered up again. One of them inscribed the illusion array, and the other blew the jade flute to interfere with Zerg's warriors. The others also found their own opponents and began to fight. Qin Chuan and Yao Rao joined forces and rushed towards Senna and Band, who were maintaining the stability of the wormhole. Their purpose here was not to fight with Zerg's warriors, but to destroy the teleportation channel. Chapter 440. Bastard. After perceiving the intention of Qin Chuan and Yao Rao, Cook immediately became furious. He turned around and opened his mouth to spit out a pool of black mucus toward Qin Chuan and Yao Rao, which changed into a black film in the air, wanting to trap Qin Chuan and Yao Rao. However, Yao Rao waved her fan, and that black film directly dissipated in the air before it even got close to them. Seeing this scene, Cook no longer cared about Su Kwang and wanted to intercept Qin Chuan and Yao Rao. However, Su Kwang went all out, and under the support of his sword intent, his sword chi poured out in torrents, firmly dragging Cook. Cook temporarily couldn't get rid of Su Kwang's interception, so he could only pin his hope on other Zerg warriors. Lin Se was the most promising person to block Qin Chuan and Yao Rao. Lin Se didn't disappoint Cook's expectation. His figure suddenly swelled and changed into a huge beetle, blocking in front of Qin Chuan and Yao Rao. Facing Lin Se's obstruction, Qin Chuan didn't care about it and kept rushing forward, and Yao Rao waved her hand and shot out several scarlet feathers to attack Lin Se. Lin Se had seen the scene of these scarlet feathers exploding, so he raised his foreleg to block these scarlet feathers. But before he could touch these scarlet feathers, those scarlet feathers automatically exploded and changed into a sky full of fire curtain that enveloped Lin Se. Although this fire curtain wouldn't cause any harm to Lin Se, but it could obstruct Lin Se's vision, giving Qin Chuan enough time to attack those two Zerg's warriors who were maintaining the stability of transmission channel. Whoosh! Qin Chuan's figure, as fast as lightning, passed through Lin Se's defense in the blink of an eye and arrived at the transmission channel. He looked at Senna and Band, who were waiting for him, but he didn't have any intention to attack, rather took out an array disc inscribed with all-directional lightning prison array from a storage ring. However, the disc array was not the main point. The main point was the high-grade Thunder Spirit Stone placed on top of the disc array, under the shocked and furious gazes of Sienna and Band. Qin Chuan raised his hand and threw the array disc into the teleportation channel. He roared, "All-directional Thunder Prison, activate!" Sizzle. The moment Qin Chuan activated the disc array, the surging and violent power of thunder immediately wreaked havoc, erupting with an earth-shattering destructive power. Moreover, under Qin Chuan's control, the power did not leak out at all, pouring into the teleportation channel. No! Seeing this, Cook's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Sienna and Band also stopped the power transmission and wanted to attack Qinchuan to stop Qinchuan, but it was all too late. Rumble. There was a violent roar in the teleportation channel, and the dazzling purple light instantly dimmed and flickered. The next moment, it condensed into a shocking purple ball of light and suddenly expanded. When he saw this scene, the pupils of Qinchuan, who was originally excited, couldn't help but constrict as he exclaimed, "Run!" Bang! The explosion was as if the world was going to end. After the violent roar, the world returned to normal. The treasure land had disappeared, and so had the forest. In its place was a huge crater with a diameter of at least 10,000 meters. Ma Jiawen and Bai Feng stood at the edge of the crater, looking at the crater in front of them in shock. It was as if they had lost the ability to organize their words, and could only gasp in amazement. After a long time, Bai Feng finally calmed down and said, "What is this? What has happened?" "I don't know." Ma Jiawen shook her head. "I don't know anything." Because Bai Feng was injured, Ma Jiawen was arranged by Yao Rao to escort Bai Feng to the cave, where they had agreed with Bai Yu to recuperate. On the way, the two of them suddenly felt a strong explosion behind them and immediately hid. After the explosion was over, the ground in front of them had become like this. Such a violent explosion. Princess Rao and the others, Ma Jiawen, looked around in horror, trying to find those familiar figures, but she could not see them. "What is that?" Bai Feng, who had excellent eyesight, seemed to have seen something and pointed at the crater. Ma Jiawen looked in the direction Bai Feng was pointing at, and could vaguely see something emitting a soft white light. It was about the size of a palm. "I can't see it clearly." "I can see it, it's a key." Bai Feng seemed to have thought of something and said to Ma Jiawen, "Treasure ground. I know. This key is very likely to be the key to open the unfettered secret realm." Hearing Bai Feng's words, Ma Jiawen seemed to have thought of something and exclaimed, "Zer chose to build a teleportation channel in this treasure ground. He must know that the key is here. They want to use the unfettered secret realm as a bridgehead to attack us. If this key was the key used to open the carefree secret realm as they had guessed, then everything would make sense. Jiawen, go and get the key." Bai Feng looked at the key and said to Ma Jiawen, "If we have the key, we will have control of the unfettered secret realm. Not only can we destroy Zerg's plan, we can also use it to negotiate with the humans." Hearing Bai Feng's words, Ma Jiawen immediately spread her wings and flew towards the key in the middle of the crater. Just as Ma Jiawen was close to the key and was about to get it, a huge black beetle suddenly jumped out of the crater and rushed towards Ma Jiawen. "Be careful." Bai Feng immediately noticed the black beetle and exclaimed, reminding Ma Jiawen to be careful. Puffed. The black beetle opened its mouth and spat out a ball of dark green mucus, which rushed towards Ma Jiawen. Ma Jiawen sensed the danger and instinctively dodged. At the same time, the black beetle's figure flashed and arrived next to the key. It opened its mouth and swallowed the key. After swallowing the key, the black beetle's body began to shrink and turned into a tall and strong giant covered in carapace. That damned thing, it actually destroyed the wormhole. Cook looked at the crater in front of him with a gloomy expression. Even though he had obtained the key to open the unfettered secret realm, it still could not make him happy. Not far away, Ma Jiawen looked at Cook with vigilance. She had thought that no one would be able to survive the explosion just now. She did not expect this Zerg warrior to survive, and he even seemed to be unscathed. Just as Ma Jiawen was carefully observing Cook, Cook also looked at Ma Jiawen and said coldly, "There are actually other demons here. It looks like they're the accomplices of those bastards. Since I don't have the chance to kill them, I'll vent my anger on you." Although Ma Jiawen did not understand what Cook was saying, she could smell a trace of danger from the aura emitted from Cook's body. Facing Cook, whose strength was unknown, she decided to run first. Chapter 441. Ma Jiawen turned around and ran, but Cook would not let Ma Jiawen get what she wanted. The cicada-like wings on Cook's back flapped, and his body shot towards Ma Jiawen like lightning. In the blink of an eye, he was close to Ma Jiawen. At this time, Ma Jiawen had already sensed the danger behind her. However, before she could turn around to respond, Cook's attack had already arrived. The sharp insect leg pierced Ma Jiawen's wings like lightning. Ma Jiawen could not help but cry out in pain. Listen to that, what a beautiful sound. Cook looked at Ma Jiawen's wings that were bleeding with bright red blood. His ugly face could not help but reveal a look of enjoyment. He stretched out his hand and wanted to grab Ma Jiawen's wings, but a feather suddenly flew over and pierced his palm. Cook slowly turned his head to look in the direction of the feather. After seeing Bai Feng's figure, he sneered. "Smash it. I'll kill you later." With that, Cook was about to continue torturing Ma Jiawen. However, at this moment, an extremely fierce aura suddenly appeared behind him. Bang! A huge body slammed into Cook's body, sending him flying. He stood in front of Ma Jiawen, panting slightly, and said in a low voice, "Run." Ma Jiawen looked at the bloody giant dragon in front of her and immediately recognized that it was Qin Chuan. She did not have time to thank him. She endured the pain from her wound and quickly flew towards Bai Feng in the distance. At this time, Cook had already stabilized himself. He looked at the giant dragon in the sky and could not help but reveal a hint of surprise in his eyes. "It's actually a dragon?" Qin Chuan didn't understand Cook's exclamation. Even if he did, he didn't have time to think about it. If it weren't for the fact that he had to rescue Ma Jiawen, he might have stayed in the deep pit for a while longer because his injuries were too serious. The moment he sensed that the teleportation channel was about to explode, Qin Chuan did not hesitate to use the dragonification technique to transform into a dragon. He used his powerful dragon body to resist the explosion. However, he still underestimated the power of the explosion. Even the dragon body could not completely withstand the terrifying impact. Most of the dragon scales on his body were destroyed, and his body was badly mutilated. He was not an azure dragon, but a blood dragon. Cook looked at Qin Chuan's miserable appearance and sneered. "It seems that even if you're not dead, you're almost dead. In that case, let me end your life with my own hands." As he spoke, Cook's figure suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared on top of Qin Chuan's head. He reached out his hands, grabbed the dragon's horn on Qin Chuan's head. He actually wanted to ride on Qin Chuan's body. Just as Cook's hands were about to touch the dragon's horn, a bright electric light suddenly bloomed on the dragon's horn. A violent force surged toward Cook. In the face of Qin Chuan's counterattack, Cook sneered. His figure flickered again. This time, he came to Qin Chuan's tail. He brazenly reached out and grabbed the dragon's tail. Then he suddenly exerted force and swung Qin Chuan in the air, making a whistling wind sound as he spun in the air. Qin Chuan struggled hard, but he was completely unable to break free from Cook's restraint. The powerful force also made it impossible for Qin Chuan to make any counterattack. He could only passively endure all of this. Whoosh! Cook suddenly let go, and Qin Chuan suddenly flew out under this huge inertia. Cook chased after him and raised his hand to hit Qin Chuan's head. At the critical moment, in order to avoid Cook's attack, Qin Chuan had to cancel his transformation and return to his human form. Qin Chuan returned to his human form. His figure suddenly shrank, and Cook's fierce attack missed. He stopped and looked at Qin Chuan falling into the deep pit. He smiled coldly, leaned over, and rushed toward Qin Chuan again. Qin Chuan looked at Cook, who was rushing toward him. His bloody face could not help but show a ruthless expression. He roared, took out the last piece of upper-rank Thunder Spirit Stone, and began to absorb the thunder power contained in it crazily. As this violent power was injected into his broken body, Qin Chuan's body suddenly swelled. Seeing the changes in Qin Chuan's body, Cook realized that Qin Chuan wanted to self-explode. He immediately stopped his charge and calmly looked at Qin Chuan's body going out of control little by little, walking toward the edge of explosion. Qin Chuan saw Cook had stopped, and his face could not help but show a touch of despair. At this time, a burst of cool breeze blew, and Qin Chuan's swollen body actually slowly shrunk back, returning to his original appearance. You don't care about your life? On top of dirty feathers, Yaorao looked at Qin Chuan with tired expression. Her eyes were filled with joy. If her movement was a bit slower, perhaps Qin Chuan would have really self-exploded. Qin Chuan looked at Yaorao, who was holding him in a daze, then asked in hoarse voice, "You didn't die? If I died, can you still see me now?" Yaorao exhaled and helplessly said, "That explosion was too terrifying. At that time, I also didn't have enough time to protect other people. I could only protect myself." Qin Chuan could understand Yaorao's helplessness, because at that time, he also wanted to protect the people around him. But the explosion came too suddenly and too violently. Other than himself, he basically didn't have enough time to protect anyone. Thinking that Lu Zi and others might have died in the explosion, Qin Chuan felt a heart-piercing pain. If he had known earlier, he would rather not have detonated the transmission channel. Hey, now is not the time to be sad. Zerg might not be the only one alive. Yaorao glanced at Cook, who was not far away, then said to Qin Chuan, "I need you." Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan looked at Yaorao and asked, "What can I do?" "Of course you can be my helper." Yaorao smiled, then took out a scarlet pill and placed it in front of Qin Chuan's mouth. "After you eat this thing, it will allow your body to recover to its peak state in a short period of time. But there will be some sequela." Before Yaorao finished speaking, Qin Chuan had already opened his mouth and swallowed that scarlet pill into his stomach. After that he sat up, then looking at Cook in the sky with cold gaze, he said in heavy voice, "Even if I will die after eating this, I will also kill this disgusting thing before I die." Having heard what was said, Yaorao chuckled. "I like your current imposing manner, very confident, very bold." Just when Yaorao was speaking, Qin Chuan's body had already begun to recover, and the injuries all over his body had disappeared without a trace. The effect was miraculous, which Qin Chuan had never seen before in his life. "You can't fly. I will lend you this thing for the time being." Yaorao handed over a white feather to Qin Chuan, then said to Qin Chuan, "Keep this feather close to your body. You can freely move in the sky for a short period of time." Qin Chuan looked at Yaorao in surprise. "Where did you get so many good things?" Yaorao faintly smiled. Then looking at Cook, she said, "Want to know? Kill him, and I will tell you." Chapter 442. Didn't expect there is still a survivor. Looking at Qin Chuan and Yaorao on the feather, the 6 eyes on Cook's face slightly narrowed, revealing a touch of pondering expression. Whoosh! A burst of air-breaking sound resounded in Cook's ears. Then Qin Chuan's figure very suddenly appeared in front of him. Then he directly raised his hand and threw out a punch, and the surging power was like a river bursting the dike. Roaring, facing Qin Chuan's sudden attack, Cook also threw out a punch. Compared to Qin Chuan's flesh and blood body, Cook's fist with the protection of carapace was much bigger and also much more powerful. 2 people's fists collided with each other, and the powerful impact made both of them simultaneously fall back. Meanwhile, Yaorao's figure flashed and suddenly appeared behind Cook. She waved her feather fan towards Cook's back, and a burst of breeze blew, making Cook's hair stand on end. Buzz! Cook's tall body suddenly dispersed, changing into countless tiny flying insects, and flew in all directions. Then once again converged together in the air, and once again condensed into Cook's appearance. "What is this?" Qin Chuan was somewhat surprised. "Don't tell me he is formed by countless small insects." "It shouldn't be." Yaorao looked at Cook with subtle expression, then said to Qin Chuan, "If he can use this move without any restriction, then it will be very difficult for my Tianyi Fan to deal with him." Tianyi Fan was Yaorao's most dependent magic weapon. If Tianyi Fan couldn't play its role, then Yaorao's battle prowess would be reduced, which was extremely disadvantageous for them. "You find an opportunity, I will test him," Qin Chuan said, then once again rushed towards Cook. With a thought, lightning controlling talisman array was engraved and changed into a lightning sword which he held in his hand, then slashed towards Cook. Lightning flashed and thunder rolled, and sword light was resplendent. Qin Chuan's attack seemed somewhat fancy, but in fact, its effect was not bad at all. The area covered by sword light had lightning power surging, which almost sealed Cook's dodging space. If Cook once again changed his body into countless flying insects, then he might not have the opportunity to escape. With regards to Qinchuan's idea, Cook was able to see through it in a glance, and even somewhat disdained it, because he didn't feel that Qinchuan's attack could cause any harm to him. On the contrary, that feather fan in the hand of Yaorao was what he should be vigilant about. If you get distracted while fighting me, you will suffer. Seeing that Cook wasn't paying attention to him, Qinchuan couldn't help but get somewhat angry. He had never thought that this guy would actually look down on him like this. Although Cook didn't understand what Qinchuan was talking about, but from Qinchuan's expression, he could see that Qinchuan was in a very bad mood. At this moment, his palm changed into a sharp insect leg and continuously waved towards the sword light that filled the sky. In a blink of an eye, the inescapable net laid out by Qinchuan was broken, and even a part of his strength was used to counterattack Qinchuan. It could be said that he was quite relaxed. Qinchuan raised his sword to block, and looking at that strange green energy bombarding his sword, his expression couldn't help but become somewhat strange. How come this kind of feeling is somewhat familiar? When Qinchuan was thinking like this, Yaorao gave him the answer. The energy he released is the same as the energy released by the energy cannon installed on our Demon Clan's bone battleship. You can understand that our Demon Clan's energy cannon was researched from Zerg's body. Hearing Yaorao, Qinchuan couldn't help but suddenly saw the light. No wonder he felt that the green energy released by Cook was somewhat familiar. As it turned out, it was similar to Demon Clan's energy cannon. When you were researching it, did you find any shortcomings of this kind of energy? Having heard what Qinchuan said, Yaorao's face suddenly exposed a touch of embarrassment. Presently, they were facing Zerg, so they ought to help each other. But if she told this secret to Qinchuan, then once Qinchuan divulged this secret to Human Clan's military, then the consequences would be too horrible to contemplate. Qinchuan saw the apprehension of Yaorao, so he bluntly said, "I swear by my heart, demon, if in the future I divulge even half a word about the secret of energy cannon, then in the future when I break through the realm, I will definitely suffer the backlash of my heart, demon." At this moment, facing the formidable Cook, Qinchuan didn't have time to talk nonsense with Yaorao. Instead of playing emotional card, it was better to directly swear an oath. Bang! Just after Qinchuan spoke the oath, Cook's counterattack had already arrived. A group of dark green energy violently shot out from Cook's mouth and directly collided with lightning sword in the hand of Qinchuan, instantly shattering this lightning sword. At the same time, Cook's figure, as if an artillery shell shot towards Qinchuan and ruthlessly collided with Qinchuan's chest, blasting Qinchuan towards the ground. Qinchuan was already prepared, but he was still unable to block Cook's attack. If not for his body had already been strengthened several times, then this collision was enough to crush his bones. Seeing Qinchuan being suppressed by Cook, Yaorao no longer hesitated. Gritting her teeth, she said to Qinchuan, "This kind of energy is actually a kind of wood attribute energy after being purified and refined. You can understand it as with spirit power. You should also understand the principle of mutual restraint of 5 elements." Hearing Yaorao, Qinchuan's eyes couldn't help but lit up. He actually didn't associate this kind of energy with wood attribute. Metal restrains wood. Qinchuan looked at Yaorao with burning eyes and said in deep voice, "Help me stall for 1 minute." Finished speaking, Qinchuan's figure repeatedly flickered and instantly arrived behind Yaorao, then took out talisman pen and began to inscribe talisman array. Seeing Qinchuan's action, Yaorao couldn't help but look towards Cook, who was flying towards them. This time she didn't use Tion E-Fan to deal with Cook, rather chose to use red feathers to bombard Cook. Rumble. Countless red feathers shot out, exploding in the path that Cook had to pass through, forming a blazing sea of fire, blocking Cook in the distance. Cook also didn't attack. Instead, he was looking at Qinchuan and Yaorao with interest, as if he wasn't worried about his current situation at all. Seeing that sinister smile on Cook's face, Yaorao instinctively felt some danger in her heart. but for a moment she was unable to tell what exactly was wrong. At this time, suddenly a burst of intense dark green-colored radiance lit up under their feet, attracting the attention of Yaorao. This is, seeing the rapidly approaching dark green-colored radiance under her feet, the expression on Yaorao's face suddenly became horrified. The diameter of several tens of meters thick dark green-colored light beam completely submerged the figure of Qin Chuan and Yaorao. Cook believed that no one would be able to survive in this kind of situation. Captain, Senna and Ban flapped their wings and arrived beside Cook, then said in unison, "We were unable to protect the wormhole. Please punish us." "No need. This is not your fault." Cook looked at the gradually dissipating energy beam in the sky, then said with a smile, "You have already made up for your faults. These two." Chapter 443. The figure of Qin Chuan and Yaorao had already disappeared from the sky and was replaced by a huge golden ball. Cook slightly narrowed his eyes and sneered. It seems these two really have a lot of tricks up their sleeves. Seeing the golden ball in front of him, Sina's complexion slightly changed. That attack just now, even Insect Queen may not be able to completely resist it. So how could they block it? The fact is right in front of us. Cook took a deep look at the golden ball, then said to Sina and Band, "You two retreat, leave the rest to me." Just now, in order to launch the attack, Sina and Band had already used up all of their remaining energy, so they basically had no fighting strength left, so it was best for them to stand aside and watch the battle. When Sina and Band retreated, that golden ball also slowly shrunk and dissipated, revealing Qin Chuan and Yaorao who were wrapped inside it. Qin Chuan observed the situation all around and said to Yaorao, "You are right, metal restrains wood. In that violent impact just now, that energy bombardment didn't cause any harm to us." Yaorao curiously looked at the 5-color array diagram that was slowly rotating beside Qin Chuan and asked, "What is this?" Although Yaorao already knew that Qin Chuan was an outstanding talisman array master, but this was the first time she had seen this kind of array diagram. It is called 5 Elements Rotation Array Diagram Combination. It was researched by me and a big brother together. It could be considered as my personal invention. Qin Chuan grinned. As for its might, you will see it later. While speaking, Qin Chuan slowly took 2 steps forward, then pointed at Cook. "You are dead." Cook sneered and also pointed at Qin Chuan. "I don't understand what you are talking about, idiot." Scarlet Flame Array Diagram. Facing this provocative gesture of Cook, Qin Chuan didn't hesitate, immediately gathered his spirit power above the Scarlet Flame Array Diagram, and launched a monstrous flame attack towards Cook. Seeing the flame attack surging towards him, Cook sneered, but he didn't dodge. His figure flashed and unexpectedly passed through the flame attack, brazenly launched an attack towards Qin Chuan. Puff! Qin Chuan opened his mouth and spat out a ball of viscous liquid. It suddenly exploded in the air and turned into countless small balls that completely surrounded Qin Chuan. No matter which direction Qin Chuan dodged, he would inevitably be contaminated by the liquid. After Qin Chuan sensed Cook's intention, he immediately used the red flame talisman matrix to burn these small balls. To Qin Chuan's surprise, these small balls were easily burned by the flames. However, what Qin Chuan did not expect was that these small balls did not disappear after being burned. Instead, they turned into a dark green mist and shrouded him again. Faced with this stinky and fishy dark green mist, Qin Chuan quickly realized that he had fallen into a trap. However, it was already too late for him to think of this. Just as Qin Chuan was about to wrap himself in flames and rush out of the area covered by the dark green fog, a strong gust of wind blew past and blew the fog away. "Leave this kind of dispersing matter to me." Not far away, Yaorao, who was playing with Tian Yifan, indifferently said to Qin Chuan, "To do this kind of thing, there is nothing more suitable than Tian Yifan." Upon seeing this, Qin Chuan was overjoyed, but the complexion of Cook quickly became gloomy. He truly hated Yaorao, this woman who repeatedly spoiled his good deed. "First I will kill you." This time Cook chose to shift his target. placing his focus on Yaorao. He was prepared to first kill Yaorao, who was the biggest threat to him, then turn around to properly deal with Qinchuan. However, Qinchuan didn't give Cook the opportunity to approach Yaorao. Using the power of 5 elements rotation talisman matrix to reinforce red flame talisman matrix, he sent the raging flame that seemed to burn through the sky to the front of Cook. Cook didn't fear ordinary flame, but this red flame talisman matrix that was strengthened by 5 elements rotation talisman matrix was so powerful that it was very difficult for Cook to ignore it. He had to be careful when dealing with it. Facing the attack of this flame again and again, Cook finally couldn't bear it any longer. He condensed a powerful energy wave in his mouth, wanting to disperse the flame in front of him. However, just when he was about to release the energy, that flame that filled the sky suddenly disappeared and was replaced by dazzling golden radiance. Sharp gold talisman matrix. Sharp golden radiance covered the heaven and earth, and Cook subconsciously closed his eyes. He had never thought that, after closing his eyes this time, he would never have the opportunity to open his eyes again. After the dazzling golden radiance dissipated, the heaven and earth returned back to tranquility. Qinchuan slowly opened his eyes and looked ahead, but he didn't see any trace of Cook. He vigilantly looked all around and discovered that other than Yaorao, even other 2 Zerg fighters had also disappeared. "Don't look, he is already dead." Yaorao rather subtly looked at Qinchuan. She had never thought that Qinchuan's 5 elements rotation talisman matrix combination would actually possess such formidable might. Having heard what was said, Qinchuan looked at Yaorao with extreme astonishment. Dead? Although Qinchuan was very confident in the might of 5 elements rotation talisman matrix combination, but he had never thought that Cook would actually be directly killed in an instant. "You shouldn't be thinking that you killed him in an instant, right?" Yaorao sneered. "You only seriously injured him, nothing more." "Then who? It's me." Bayu's petite figure suddenly appeared in front of Qinchuan. She looked at Qinchuan and said with a slightly regretful tone, "Just now I went to chase after those 2 Zerg fighters, but unfortunately they escaped." Seeing Bayu's sudden appearance, Qinchuan was somewhat surprised and asked, "It was you who killed that Zerg fighter?" Bayu nodded her head and said, "Your attack seriously injured him, so I took advantage of the opportunity to draw out the blood from his body from the wound." Hearing Bayu's answer, Qinchuan was extremely astonished. He had never thought that Bayu would actually use this kind of method to kill Cook. But thinking about it carefully, this was very much in line with Bayu's style. "Where are the others?" Bayu looked all around, but didn't see Qin Changxing and others. Hearing Bayu asking about the others, Qinchuan's complexion suddenly became pale. He opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Seeing Qinchuan's expression change, Bayu's complexion slightly changed. Soon after, she closed her eyes and carefully sensed. After a moment, she suddenly lowered her head to look at the deep pit and said to Qinchuan, "I feel it, they're still alive, right below." Qinchuan immediately asked in pleasant surprise, "Really?" "Of course it's true." Bayu glanced at Qinchuan. "Their current situation is somewhat bad. We have to rescue them as soon as possible." Qinchuan immediately fell into the deep pit after hearing this, and Bayu followed closely behind. Yaorao looked at the 2 people's departing figure and couldn't help but clench the white jade key in her hand. Chapter 444. In the deep pit, under the ruins, Lu Zi sat on a stone and looked at the translucent defense glyph array in front of her. Her heart was filled with joy. If Yi Qingning hadn't used this defense glyph array at the critical moment, she might have been a dead person by now. We're here. As long as Qinchuan is still alive and hasn't forgotten us, he should come and find us. At that time, we can go out. Yi Qingning looked at the defense glyph array in front of her and felt a little emotional. When she entered the carefree secret realm, she didn't expect that she would have to use this golden soup glyph array so soon. The golden soup glyph array was the strongest glyph array in terms of defense among the 3rd level glyph arrays. However, this glyph array also had a big flaw, which was that it couldn't be controlled. Simply put, you could control the opening of the golden soup glyph array, but you couldn't control the closing of the golden soup glyph array. If you wanted to close the golden soup glyph array, unless the spiritual power stored in the array disk was exhausted or was broken from the outside by a powerful external force, the people inside would never be able to get out. Qin Chuan. Thinking of Qin Chuan, Lu Zi couldn't help but show a touch of worry on her face. At the time of the explosion, Qin Chuan was the closest to the transmission channel and should have suffered the most impact. His current situation might not be any better. Yi Qingming looked at Lu Zi with a subtle expression and asked, "Are you very concerned about Qin Chuan?" Lu Zi turned to look at Yi Qingming. "We're very good friends." "Just friends?" Obviously, Yi Qingming didn't believe that the relationship between Qin Chuan and Lu Zi was so simple and pure. Lu Zi pursed her lips and said softly, "At least in his heart, our relationship is like this." Yi Qingming understood. She was in the same situation as LVZ. She was in a similar situation. Whoosh! At this moment, there was the sound of rocks being moved above the defensive glyphs. Broken rays of light shone in from the darkness. Yi Qingming and Lu Zi instinctively looked up. When they saw Qin Chuan's smiling face, the two of them smiled happily at the same time. When Qin Chuan saw that Lu Zi and Yi Qingming were almost unharmed, he couldn't help but rejoice. "You're both still alive. That's great." Yi Qingming looked up at Qin Chuan. "This is the golden soup glyph formation. You have to focus your power on one point to break it and save us." When Qin Chuan heard this, he glanced at the transparent film under his feet with some surprise. So this is the famous golden soup glyph formation. As a talisman formation master, Qin Chuan had naturally heard of the renowned gold pool talisman formation, but it was the first time he'd seen it with his own two eyes, and he couldn't help but want to study it. However, before he could carefully study the structure of the gold pool talisman formation, Baiyu had already raised her fair and tender hand up high and fiercely smashed her fist onto the membrane. Kacha, kacha. Along with a crisp cracking sound, the golden soup glyph array shattered. Everyone looked at the expressionless Baiyu in astonishment. They were all stunned. The rumored impregnable top glyph formation was shattered by Baiyu's punch, just like that. Qin Chuan looked at Yi Qingming with a subtle expression and asked, "Are you sure this is the golden soup glyph formation?" Yi Qingming nodded. To be honest, she was also a bit stunned. She didn't expect Baiyu to be able to shatter the golden soup glyph formation so easily with one punch. "This glyph formation isn't as sturdy as you think," Baiyu looked at Qin Chuan and explained, "I can feel that it's very weak." Hearing this, Qin Chuan raised his eyebrows and asked, "How did you feel that?" "It's a talent," Baiyu replied. "I'm very sensitive to all energy." Qin Chuan pondered for a moment and said to everyone, "This golden soup glyph formation used up a lot of energy to withstand the explosion of the teleportation tunnel. Maybe it was only maintaining the sturdiness on the surface, but it's actually very weak. This is the only possibility I can think of." If it was in perfect condition, Qin Chuan didn't believe Baiyu could shatter it with one punch. "Okay, that's not the main point." Lu Zi asked Baiyu with concern, "Did you find Long Xiao?" Baiyu nodded. "I found her. She's resting in the cave now." LVZ couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when she heard Baiyu say she'd found Long Xiao, and then she started to worry for the others. They were lucky to have the protection of the gold pool talisman formation, but the others might not be so lucky. "Let's end the chat here. Let's go find the others." Qin Chuan turned to Baiyu. "I'll leave this mission to you." Baiyu nodded and said to everyone, "Follow me." Everyone followed behind Baiyu and continued to move forward in the deep pit. After a while, they found a bumpy metal lump buried under the earth. Looking at the 2-meter-tall metal lump, Baiyu said to Qin Chuan, "This thing's aura is the same as Chun Chongqing's golden cage formation. Chun Chongqing should be inside." Hearing Baiyu's words, Qin Chuan stepped forward and patted the metal lump, but there was no response. "Just break it open. This thing is the same as the golden soup glyph formation. It should be very fragile after the explosion." While speaking, Bai took a step forward and casually broke off a piece of the metal lump and threw it on the ground. Seeing this, Qin Chuan no longer hesitated and began to break it open with his bare hands. Soon, they pulled out the unconscious Chen Chongqing from the metal lump. Although the golden cage formation was very sturdy, it was much weaker than the golden soup glyph formation. Therefore, although Chen Chongqing didn't die, he was seriously injured. However, this was already a blessing in disguise. There's also Su Kuang and the others from the Yao clan. Qin Chuan glanced at Yi Qingning. You have something to save your life. Su Kuang and the others should also have something. No need to look, we're here. At this moment, a slightly weak voice came from not far away. It was Su Kuang. He, Sun Yu, and Fei Peng supported each other and walked over with difficulty. Seeing Su Kuang and the others, everyone was pleasantly surprised. Qin Chuan hurriedly went up and asked with concern, "How are you guys?" "We're all fine but Wan Shi." Sun Yu took out a small white snake with a sad expression and said to Qin Chuan. At that time, Wan Shi turned into her true form and swallowed us into her stomach. After the explosion, she spat us out. Because her injuries were too serious, she could only shed her skin to save her life and became like this. Seeing Wan Shi's condition, Su Kuang and Fei Peng's hearts were extremely heavy. In order to protect them, Wan Shi lost her cultivation. If she wanted to cultivate back, it would take at least 20 years. Chapter 445. Just when everyone was feeling sad for Pantheon, Yao Rao's figure descended from the sky and arrived beside everyone. She glanced at Wan Shi and Sun Yu's hand, pursed her lips, then said to everyone, "After returning, I will send Wan Shi to Heavenly Beast Temple and request Father Emperor to help Wan Shi restore her realm." Hearing Yao Rao, Sun Yu was pleasantly surprised. If Demon Emperor is willing to help, then Wan Shi will be saved. Fei Peng was also happy for Wan Shi. Although they often quarreled in the past, as if they were not on good terms, but in fact, they were friends who grew up together, and their relationship was extremely good. Otherwise, Wan Shi would not have sacrificed herself to swallow everyone at that critical moment. Let's find a place to rest first. Yao Rao glanced at Qin Chuan and said, "I have something to tell you, come with me." Qin Chuan nodded his head, then followed Yao Rao to a distant place. After they were far away from everyone, Yao Rao turned to look at Qin Chuan and said, "I have checked. Except for those 2 Zerg soldiers who escaped, all other Zerg soldiers are already dead." Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan nodded his head and said, "The strength of those 2 Zerg soldiers can't be regarded as strong, so they shouldn't be a big threat to us. As long as we can find them, we can kill them. I also have the same idea, but I have other things to tell you." Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan with serious expression. "This time we have destroyed Zerg's plan, but next time we may not be so lucky. We must make preparations in advance. There's no need to say much about Demon Clan's side, but your human clan side is troublesome." Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan grinned and said, "I understand what you mean, but this kind of thing you should look for Su Kuang or Yi Qingning. Their influence in human clan is greater than mine." "Them?" Yao Rao sneered. "They can't do anything." Qin Chuan was somewhat puzzled. "Why do you say that? Your human clans and sects are best at protecting themselves. How do you think these worlds survived from the Great Chaos period until now? Isn't it because they are timid, cautious enough, and know how to preserve their strength the most?" Yao Rao had always been extremely disdainful towards those humans who thought themselves to be aloof and remote. Yi Qingning and Su Kuang had personally witnessed the terror of Insect Clan, so after returning, they would naturally report the truth, but Deity Sword Villa and Yi Clan's ruler might not necessarily do as they wished. "If those 2 people can't do anything, then I can't do anything." Qin Chuan said, "You clans, clan, 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 clan." Qin Chuan stared blankly for a moment, then replied, "That's not necessary, because the people around me are all here, and they have personally experienced this matter, so I don't need to influence them." Yao Rao blankly looked at Qin Chuan for a while, then asked, "You really don't know anything?" This time it was Qin Chuan's turn to be stunned. He looked at Yao Rao with puzzlement and asked, What should I know? Yao Rao earnestly looked at Qin Chuan and asked, You answer me. What is your purpose for entering unfettered secret realm? Hearing Yao Rao's question, Qin Chuan subconsciously replied, Of course it's to look for opportunities. Look for opportunities? Yao Rao subtly looked at Qin Chuan and said, You shouldn't be thinking that after millions of years, there is still a huge opportunity waiting for you in unfettered secret realm, right? Having heard what was said, Qin Chuan somewhat didn't know how to answer Yao Rao. He looked at Yao Rao and curiously asked, What do you want to say? There are indeed some opportunities in unfettered secret realm, but rather than saying that we have come here to look for opportunities, it would be better to say that we have come here to carry out a trial. Yao Rao very earnestly looked at Qin Chuan and said, You and I are both members of this trial. Trial? Qin Chuan felt that he was completely unable to understand. Didn't they come here to look for opportunities? How did it have anything to do with trial? Seeing Qin Chuan really didn't know anything, Yao Rao patiently explained to Qin Chuan. In the universe we live in, there are countless universe relics, and unfettered secret realm is merely one of them that has already been deeply developed and has almost lost its value. So the real reason we have entered unfettered secret realm is not to look for opportunities, rather to enter other universe relics to carry out a trial. To put it simply, this is a test before the real exam. Do you understand? Qin Chuan blankly looked at Yao Rao and asked, You mean we are now carrying out a trial in order to compete for the qualification to enter other universe relics? That's right. Yao Rao nodded her head. The geniuses of your human clan and our monster clan will fight in this unfettered secret realm. And after 2 months, those who can leave alive will have the qualification to enter other universe relics to carry out exploration. Such people are generally called as Heir of Realm. Heir of Realm? Regarding this brand new title that he had never heard before, Qin Chuan was full of curiosity. He looked at Yao Rao with an inquiring gaze, looking forward to Yao Rao's explanation. The universe is endless, and under this starry sky, there are countless species living. Our monster clan and your human clan are merely one of them. If we want to develop and grow stronger, we must communicate with the more powerful world outside, and Heir of Realm is our emissary to communicate with the outside world. You can simply understand them as diplomats. So what does this have to do with Zerg? I am optimistic that you can become an Heir of Realm and enter other universe relics to explore the mysteries of this world. If your influence can spread to the entire Heir of Realm, you will certainly be able to have an influence on the higher-ups of your human clan, and thus make your human clan pay attention to the matter of Zerg's reappearance. Qin Chuan was somewhat dizzy. He didn't expect that Yao Rao would beat around the bush in such a big circle just to say these words to him. Aren't you thinking a bit too highly of me? You said it yourself. Heir of Realm are extremely powerful geniuses, and I haven't even passed the trial. So isn't it a bit too early to tell me these things? It's not early at all. Wait until you become an Heir of Realm. Then you will understand how important Heir of Realm is to the higher-ups of your human clan. Believe me, work hard to become an Heir of Realm, so that you can understand more about the truth of this world. Chapter 446. Qin Chuan found that the people he knew always inadvertently had an impact on his worldview. Zhou was like this, then Azure Dragon Song Hao was like this, and now Yao Rao was also like this. Sometimes he even doubted whether the world he was living in really existed. Why was the world he saw and understood completely different from the world these people were talking about? What is the outside world you're talking about? Qin Chuan looked at Yao Rao curiously, hoping to listen to Yao Rao's introduction. Yao Rao took a deep look at Qin Chuan and said, I have never been to the outside world, but my father emperor has been there before. He told me that the outside world is more wonderful than we imagined, and also more dangerous. The place we're living in now is just a pond. How do you want me to describe the vastness of the sea to you? A pond was too small compared to the sea. Do you know how many Kunluns, heirs there are? Qin Chuan asked again, How strong are they? I don't know how strong they are, but according to my father emperor, our demon clan has a total of 39 Kunlun's heirs, and your human clan also has about the same number. But I estimate that the Kunlun's heirs are at least at the Gold Core stage, and only Gold Core stage experts can cross the universe and go to other places. Qin Chuan took a deep look at Yao Rao and said, "So after Yuaning, what is it?" "I don't know." Yao Rao shook her head. "Now these things are still too far away for us." "I understand." Qin Chuan nodded and said, "Is there anything else? I want to have a good rest." "Not for the time being. There are some things I will tell you before leaving the carefree secret territory." Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan. "Please believe me, I have no malice towards you." Qin Chuan slowly walked back to the crowd. Looking at the people who were resting, he went straight to Yi Qingning's side and sat down, looking at Yi Qingning with bright eyes. Facing Qin Chuan's somewhat passionate eyes, Yi Qingning was at a loss and couldn't help but ask, "What's the matter?" Qin Chuan pursed his lips and asked, "Do you know about the Kunlun's heirs?" Suddenly hearing Qin Chuan mention the Kunlun's heirs, Yi Qingning asked with some surprise, "Did Yao Rao just tell you?" Hearing Yi Qingning's words, Qin Chuan took a deep look at her and said, "Kunlun's heirs, you really know about them?" "It's not a secret. As Kunlun's heirs as Kunlun's heirs. As Kunlun's. Facing Yi Qingning's frankness, Qin Chuan asked again, "So, before you entered the unfettered secret territory, you knew very well that there was no opportunity here. Then why did the Qin family let me fight for a so-called key?" Yi Qingning was silent for a moment and said to Qin Chuan, "Not everyone who leaves the unfettered secret territory alive can become an Kunlun's heir. Before becoming an Kunlun's heir, you have to go through a lot of things. Only those who stand out in the end can become Kunlun's heirs, from the preparatory Kunlun's heirs to the prospective Kunlun's heirs, and then they can become real Kunlun's heirs. In this process of continuous promotion, the benefits generated are immeasurable. Holding the key to the unfettered secret territory is equivalent to holding the right to distribute these benefits. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Hearing Yi Qingning's explanation, Qin Chuan sneered. "So, the unfettered secret territory is only used for the geniuses of aristocratic families and sects to gild their gold, and the civilians are used for destruction and sacrifice." Yi Qingning sighed and said to Qin Chuan, "I know you're very dissatisfied with this, but this is how the world works. The weak are prey to the strong, and the weak are eliminated. If the rich and powerful want to stabilize their rule, they have to control the power in their own hands. The rise of the civilians is of no benefit to the rich and powerful." Qin Chuan knew that Yi Qingning was stating a fact, but he still felt angry in his heart. These people who had died were all fresh lives. When I was in the Qin family before, they once told me that the key was hidden in the unfettered residence, the glazed pagoda, and the treasure pavilion. Qin Chuan looked at Yi Qingning and asked, "Among you people, who can enter these three places safely?" At this time, Qin Chuan still had a glimmer of hope in his heart. Yi Qingning shook her head gently. "No, the unfettered residence, the glazed pagoda, and the treasure pavilion did have some opportunities and treasures, but for thousands of years, countless geniuses had died in these three places." The Qin family's words induced Qin Chuan to enter these three places, which made it clear that they wanted Qin Chuan to die. As for why the Qin family would go to such great lengths to kill Qin Chuan, Yi Qingning did not know. "What else do you know?" Qin Chuan looked at Yi Qingning, hoping that she could satisfy his curiosity. Yi Qingning thought for a moment, then said to Qin Chuan, "In fact, only a few people know the truth about the unfettered secret territory. After we leave here, we will automatically become reserve heirs of Yi, and then enter other ruins of the universe to explore and gain experience. With the support of our families, we will most likely become quasi-heirs of Yi, or even real heirs of Yi. Then we will leave this world and go to the wider world outside. These things may have been planned the moment we were born, and the others are just supporting roles." Speaking of this, Yi Qingning looked at Qin Chuan. "You are a special case. Your performance is so outstanding that it even overshadows us, the protagonists with background halos. If there are no accidents, none of us will be your opponent. The precious heir of Yez Field is very likely to fall into your hands. Some people don't want to see you become an heir of Yez Field, so they will make arrangements for you clearly. If there are no accidents, there are only two results for you. Either you die under the siege of the demon tribe in Xiaozhong Mountain, or you die in the unfettered residence, the glazed pagoda, or the treasure pavilion to help the Qin family find the key. If you are lucky enough to survive, after you leave the unfettered secret territory, the Qin family will definitely make trouble for you because you didn't bring back the key. They will secretly deprive you of your qualification to become a reserve heir of Yi and forcibly change your life path. So, they're paving the way for Qin Haoshuan. Yes, if you hadn't appeared out of nowhere, Qin Haoshuan would have shocked the world in the ranking competition of the 6 great academies and become the leader of the younger generation. After the trip to the unfettered secret territory, Qin Haoshuan would have become a reserve heir of Yi and started to become an heir of Yi step by step according to the script written by the Qin family. Your appearance is an obstacle to Qin Haoshuan. So I deserve to die? It's not that you deserve to die, but that some people think you deserve to die. Chapter 447. No matter when, the truth was always crueler than a lie. Qin Xuan sat on a rock and looked at the clear sky outside the deep pit. He asked Qin Ning faintly, "Do you also think that I shouldn't have appeared? If it weren't for the bronze box, perhaps he would still be a poor boy in the slums working part-time jobs to make a living." Qin Xuan rubbed the bronze ring on his finger. His mood was very complicated and a little confused. "I don't know." Yi Qingning looked at Qin Xuan with a subtle expression. "At least in my opinion, you're more outstanding than Qin Haoshuan." In the past, Yi Qingning used to think that Qin Haoshuan was the most outstanding person in the younger generation and would be the future leader of their small group. However, after experiencing the 6 great academies ranking competition and Qin Haoshuan's previous performance, she was completely disappointed in Qin Haoshuan. Without the background and halo that the Qin family gave Qin Haoshuan was just an ordinary genius without any shining points. However, Qin Xuan was different. Although the blood of the Qin family flowed in his body, he was the abandoned son of the Qin family. He rose from nothing and became famous in the 6 great academies ranking competition. In the current carefree secret realm, he turned the tide and saved everyone from the siege of the monster race. After that, he fought a battle of wits with Zerg and went through a lot of hardships to save both the human and the monster world. In Yi Qingning's opinion, Qin Xuan was the natural protagonist. Yi Qingning had reason to believe that if Qin Xuan was willing to return to the Qin family, the Qin family would definitely choose to abandon Qin Haoshuan and fully support Qin Xuan. However, she knew very well that no matter what, Qin Xuan would never return to the Qin family. This also meant that Qin Xuan and the Qin family could only stand on opposite sides. Even if the blood of the Qin family flowed in Qin Xuan's body, as long as Qin Xuan dared to obstruct the rise of the Qin family would never be merciful. This trip to the carefree secret realm was an irrefutable proof. Qin Xuan looked at Yi Qingning and asked, "Where's Qin Haoshuan? Where did he go?" "He escaped. I don't know where he went." Yi Qingning shook her head and said to Qin Xuan, "But one thing is for sure, he has completely lost the hearts of his people." In the small Zhong Mountain, Qin Haoshuan had abandoned everyone in order to save himself and escaped alone. This had completely ruined his reputation. When the carefree secret territory trial ended, this matter would definitely spread to the outside world. Even if Qin Haoshuan's reputation was ruined, it would still be a great blow to the Qin clan. Qin Xuan chuckled when he heard this. He said indifferently, "Do you believe that Qin Haoshuan will still be Qin Haoshuan after he leaves?" What happens in the unfettered secret realm will not affect him at all. Hearing Qin Xuan's words, Yi Qingning was silent for a moment. "Maybe you're right. What was the most powerful thing about Qin Haoshuan? Not because he was a genius, but because his surname was Qin. As long as the Qin clan didn't fall, Qin Yiming would still be the master of the Qin clan. then Qin Haoshuan would still be the seventh young master of the Qin clan, the Qilin son of the Qin clan. Even if other people despised Qin Haoshuan in their hearts, they couldn't show it on their faces. This was the reality. Thank you for being willing to tell me the truth. This made me feel a lot better. Qin Xuan looked at Yi Qingning and said, "Count it as me owing you a favor." Yi Qingning looked at Qin Xuan and said, "Your favor may be very valuable in the future. At least not now." Qin Xuan stood up and said to Yi Qingning, "By the way, does Shimanbei know about this?" Yi Qingning shook her head and said, "Although he is a member of the Shiman clan and is also a prominent figure in the younger generation of the Shiman clan, but he is definitely a marginal figure in the Shiman clan. He doesn't know many things." At this point, Yi Qingning hesitated for a moment before saying to Qin Xuan, "Shimanbei is actually a very straightforward person. He is a good person." "I know." Qin Xuan patted his butt and said to Yi Qingning, "Let's go." Yi Qingning looked at Qin Xuan's departing figure with a complicated expression. She understood that some things were just wishful thinking on her part. By the time Qin Xuan returned to the Black Moon Combat Academy, Chen Chongqing had already woken up. However, he was still a bit weak. At that time, in order to avoid the explosion, he had locked himself in the Golden Cage Battle Array. The terrifying impact had squeezed the Golden Cage Battle Array and almost killed Chen Chongqing. If Qin Xuan and the others had found Chen Chongqing a bit later, Chen Chongqing would have suffocated to death. "Boss, you're back." Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Xuan, his entire person exuding a sense of weakness from the inside out. "Rest well. We still have a long way to go." Qin Xuan smiled and turned to Long Xiao, who was sitting to the side, and asked, "How are you?" "I'm fine." Long Xiao looked at Qin Xuan with a complicated expression and said, "Lu Zi has already told me what happened. I never thought that you guys would experience so much. It was all an accident." Qin Xuan sighed. "If I could, I wouldn't want to go through all of this." After saying that, Qin Xuan sat down beside Lu Zi and took out some food and water from his storage ring. He then silently ate. Bai Yu looked at Qin Xuan and said calmly, "The two Zerg warriors escaped. If we don't catch them as soon as possible, they will become a hidden danger." Qin Xuan nodded and said to Bai Yu while swallowing the jerky, "I know what you said, but our current situation doesn't allow us to find the two Zerg warriors. The body is the capital of the revolution. We have to take care of our bodies first." Although Qin Xuan's body had recovered because of the red pill, the other's condition was not so good. Not to mention the shifter race. Just Chen Chongqing and Long Xiao alone needed some time to rest. Unfortunately, there was no healing pod here. Otherwise, the two of them would be full of energy again in less than half an hour. What are your plans next? Are you still going to act alone and find the key for the Qin family? Lu Zi looked at Qin Xuan and asked Qin Xuan about his future plans. Qin Xuan looked at Lu Zi and did not answer immediately. If it was before he knew the truth, he might have foolishly continued to help the Qin family find the key, and then he might even lose his life. But now, he would not do such a thing unless he lost his mind. "Next, I will act with you guys to find the two Zerg warriors. After we kill them, we will look for the opportunity." Qin Xuan thought for a while and said to Lu Zi, "If you guys don't want to keep running around, then go to Xiaoyao Palace. It's safer there." Lu Zi shook her head. "I'll go wherever you go. This time, I don't want to be separated from you again." Chapter 448. How could this be? On a low hill, Sienna stared at Band, who was standing beside him. He couldn't accept the fact that Cook had been killed. Band looked at Sienna helplessly and said, "We have underestimated the strength of those people. If we had known this would happen, we would have gone all out and not given them any chance." Sienna roared angrily. "It's too late to say anything now. We are deserters. We abandoned Cook. Calm down. You know that we can't do anything even if we stay there." Band looked at Sienna. "We can only avenge Cook if we stay alive. Revenge, we must avenge him." The 6 eyes on Sienna's face were burning with raging flames of hatred. It was as if he wanted to turn everything into ashes. "I must kill all those ants. Kill them all." Ban was about to speak when he heard Sienna's angry roar. Suddenly, he heard a commotion behind him. He turned around abruptly and saw a human standing behind them with a horrified expression. He seemed to be frightened by their ugly appearance. Poof! Before Band could do anything, the furious Sienna had already spat out a mouthful of viscous liquid onto that human, turning him into ashes in an instant. All humans deserve to die. Let's go. Let's create a catastrophe and kill all the humans and demons here. Xiaoyao Palace. Shimin Bei and Duan Yusin sat in the square in front of Xiaoyao residence. They looked at the unconscious Zhou Lin with a helpless expression on their faces. 3 days have passed, and Qin Xuan hasn't returned yet. Duan Yusin sighed. Are we going to let Lin Lin remain unconscious? Qin Xuan has instructed us not to let Zhou Lin wake up before he returns. Shimin Bei was also in a difficult position. They felt that they were letting Zhou Lin down by doing this. However, if Zhou Lin woke up, no one knew what she would do. If something happened, they wouldn't be able to explain it to Qin Xuan. Just when Shimin Bei and Duan Yusin were helplessly sighing, a burst of disorderly footsteps came from outside. Hearing these footsteps, both of them subconsciously turned their head and looked outside, only to see a group of people majestically walking in, and their whole body was in a sorry state. There are other people here. It seems that they didn't encounter those disgusting things. Yes, I'm afraid that Xiaoyao Palace is the safest place in the Xiaoyao secret realm now. Hearing these people's discussion, Shimin Bei asked curiously, "What are you talking about? You're Shimin Bei, right?" Someone recognized Shimin Bei and sighed. We were looking for opportunities outside. Who would have thought that we would encounter a plague of insects? We are Foundation Establishment cultivators, but we are no match for a swarm of insects. Who would believe that? Shimin Bei was surprised. This was the first time he had heard of an insect disaster in the Xiaoyao secret realm. Yeah, those insects are too powerful. They eat everything. They can even devour our protective spiritual energy. It's terrifying. Someone raised his arm and showed a bloody scar to Shimin Bei. See, this was bitten by those insects. Hearing these people's description, Duan Yusin became anxious and immediately asked, "Have you seen Qin Xuan?" Qin Xuan from the Black Moon Combat Academy during the 6 Great Academies ranking competition. Hearing Duan Yusin's words, everyone couldn't help but look at each other. One of them looked at Duan Yusin and said, "Don't tell me you don't know about Qin Xuan's heroic deeds." Qin Xuan's heroic deeds? Duan Yusin and Shimin Bei were confused. What did Qin Xuan do after he went out? Seeing the blank expressions on Duan Yusin and Shimin Bei's faces, that person smiled and said, "We heard that many humans were besieged by the demon clan at Xiaozhou Mountain. There were countless casualties, and we were in a desperate situation. Qin Xuan suddenly descended from the sky and killed several generals of the demon clan. After that, he single-handedly stopped thousands of demon clan members and protected the rest of us from retreating. It can be said that he turned the tide and was incomparably brave." As he spoke, that person became excited, as if he was Qin Xuan and had personally experienced those events. Spittle flew everywhere as he said, "You don't know how brave Qin Xuan was at that time. He laid down a symbol array and caused thunder to rumble. It was so intimidating that the demon clan members didn't dare to take a single step forward. They could only watch as our people retreated. When only Qin Xuan was left, they couldn't do anything to Qin Xuan. They were so angry that they stomped their feet." Hearing this person's words, Duan Yusin quickly asked, "So Qin Xuan is fine?" "I don't know about this, but from Qin Xuan's performance at that time, those demon clan members shouldn't have been able to do anything to Qin Xuan." Hearing this, Duan Yusin couldn't help but be stunned. After talking for so long, they still didn't know what had happened to Qin Xuan. "So, you don't know whether Qin Xuan is alive or dead." At this moment, a cold voice suddenly sounded behind Duan Yusin and Shimin Bei. Zhou Lin, who was in a coma, had woken up unknowingly. Her expression was cold and indifferent. Seeing that Zhou Lin had woken up, Duan Yusin's expression changed slightly. She said with some difficulty, "You're awake? How many days have I been in a coma?" Zhou Lin looked at Duan Yusin with an expressionless face, If something had happened to Qin Chuan, it would have happened long ago. Tell me frankly. Duan Yusin didn't dare to look at Zhou Lin. She whispered, 3 days. Shimonbei looked at Zhou Lin awkwardly and said, Actually, I didn't ask you. Zhou Lin turned and looked coldly at Shimonbei. If something had happened to Qin Chuan, I would definitely kill you and bury you with him. Facing Zhou Lin's undisguised killing intent, Shimonbei sensibly shut his mouth. He knew that Zhou Lin was serious. If something had happened to Qin Chuan, she would really kill him. Just as everyone was talking, more and more people came to the vicinity. The topics they were talking about were related to the insect disaster. It seemed that these people were basically forced to come to Xiao Yao Palace to hide from the insect disaster. When everyone was talking about the insect disaster, they inevitably talked about Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan's previous deeds had been widely spread. It was no exaggeration to say that Qin Chuan was now a hero in everyone's heart. However, no one knew whether this hero was alive or dead. I want to go out. Zhou Lin looked at Duan Yusin. I want to find him. Duan Yusin immediately advised. There's an insect disaster outside. It's too dangerous. If you go out, you won't see anything except insects. It's better to stay here. If Qin Chuan is still alive, he will definitely come back here to avoid the insect disaster. Chapter 449. Qin Chuan indeed encountered insect infestation, but he didn't have any intention to go to Xiao Yao Palace to take refuge. Compared to taking refuge, he had more important things to do. Inside the cave, Qin Chuan looked at the thick layer of insect cloud in the sky outside through the defense array, and the expression on his face was incomparably solemn. I absolutely don't believe that this insect infestation is a natural occurrence in Xiao Yao's secret territory. Hearing Qin Chuan's assertion, Yao Rao looked at him, then said with a chuckle, Even a brainless person can certainly see that this insect infestation is caused by those 2 Zerg fighters who escaped, so you don't need to say these things. Qin Chuan turned around and looked at Yao Rao, then asked, What do you think about this insect infestation? Think. Yao Rao thought for a bit, then replied, Try not to be eaten by insects. Does this count? I'm serious. Qin Chuan walked to the front of Yao Rao. We must find those 2 Zerg fighters and kill them. Otherwise, this insect infestation will never stop, and the entire Xiao Yao secret territory will be completely devoured. What you said is very reasonable. But with the current situation outside, how do you want us to find those 2 Zerg fighters? Yao Rao looked at Qin Chuan, then asked, Do you think we will find those 2 Zerg fighters first, or these insects will eat us first? Qin Chuan somewhat didn't know how to answer Yao Rao's question. The insect infestation outside was not ordinary insect infestation. These insects had terrifying ability to devour some things, and even Spiritual Power Shield was unable to resist the devouring of these insects for a long time. So if they wanted to find the trace of those 2 Zerg fighters, then it was simply more difficult than ascending to heaven, let alone killing those 2 Zerg fighters. Seeing Qin Chuan remain silent, Yao Rao said, Perhaps those 2 guys are watching us from the insect cloud outside. Do you think you have the ability to pass through that insect cloud to find them? Facing Yao Rao's question, Qin Chuan somewhat had a headache, then said, In that case, wouldn't we have no way to deal with those 2 Zerg fighters? There's a way, but it is relatively stupid, that's all. Yao Rao faintly smiled. We have to be patient and wait for them to show themselves. This place is isolated from the outside world. We simply don't have any information source, so we also don't know if they show themselves in other places. Qin Chuan helplessly said, In the end, what method do you have? Don't keep me in suspense. Seeing Qin Chuan's anxious appearance, Yao Rao couldn't help but chuckle, then asked, Yao Rao Zess, are you begging me? Seeing Yao Rao taking liberties with Qin Chuan, other people of Demon Clan had somewhat strange expression on their face. But on the side of Human Clan, LVZ's complexion was very unsightly, and she was looking at Yao Rao with an extremely unpleasant expression. Yi Qingning and Baiyu, however, were expressionless, but the former was pretending, while the latter was showing her true nature. Forget it. Qin Chuan suddenly changed his usual attitude, then walked into the cave and sat down. Just a moment ago, he was burning with impatience to find Zerg fighters and kill Zerg fighters. But now he had changed into a neither fast nor slow, leisurely person. This change made everyone a little surprised. Everyone carefully thought that Qin Chuan shouldn't be willing to lower his head to Yaorao, so he decided to change his attitude. Seeing Qin Chuan walk to the corner and sat down, Yaorao couldn't help but gawk for a moment, but soon she chuckled, then closed her eyes and began to rest. Looking at her posture, it seemed she would only be willing to help if Qin Chuan lowered his head to her. Looking at Qin Chuan and Yaorao, who were already at each other's throats, everyone was somewhat curious about who would be able to persist until the end. Who would have thought that they would have to wait for 2 days? It's already been 2 days. Yi Qingning took a glance at Qin Chuan, then again took a glance at Yaorao. 2 days had passed, but these two people didn't speak a word. Su Kuang pursed his lips, then said to Yi Qingning, "I didn't expect Qin Chuan to be so firm," not lowering his head to Yaorao. "In my opinion, instead of being in a deadlock to deal with Zerg, it would be better to say they are competing for leadership." Yi Qingning looked at Yaorao with subtle expression, then said to Su Kuang in a low voice, "Yaorao is from monster race. Qin Chuan is from human race. Now our two races have joined hands, so one side must lower their head to the other side. Qin Chuan is not fighting for his own face, rather fighting for everyone's face." Hearing Yi Qingning's opinion, the expression on Su Kuang's face also became somewhat subtle. If not for Yi Qingning's reminder, he wouldn't have realized that he had subconsciously regarded Qin Chuan as the leader of their group. Su Kuang took a deep look at Qin Chuan, then said in a low voice, "He is indeed a qualified leader, but it is only limited to the carefree secret realm." Qin Chuan's performance in all aspects could be said to be perfect. In the carefree secret realm, except for Qin Chuan, no one could convince Su Kuang. However, outside the carefree secret realm, there were too many factors to consider, and the first one was identity and background. Su Kuang didn't say it clearly, but Yi Qingning completely understood Su Kuang's meaning. If Qin Chuan wanted to truly stand up and become the most dazzling star among the younger generation, he must have someone behind him. Yi Qingning looked at Su Kuang meaningfully and said, "Qin Chuan's teacher, Ningya, is one of the few 4th-grade battle troop dispatchers in our Star Dragon Federation. She is also in the peak Gold Core realm, and the nascent Soul realm is just around the corner. And Ningya's teacher, Ning Zhongtian, is a real nascent Soul realm expert. It is said that he has already manifested his domain, and his strength is super strong. He is also Qin Chuan's advisor." Hearing Yi Qingning's words, Su Kuang couldn't help but gently raise his eyebrows. Ningya's current influence may be negligible, but Ning Zhongtian's influence can't be ignored. If Qin Chuan can get the support of senior Ning Zhongtian, then even the Qin family will absolutely not dare to easily provoke Qin Chuan. Su Kuang looked at Yi Qingning and said, "I take back what I said just now. Maybe he really is qualified to fight for it. But it's only a possibility." Su Kuang suddenly said, "As far as I know, Senior Ning Zhongtian has not been involved in the affairs of the world for many years and is in a state of seclusion. Even Ningya may not be able to invite him out, so Qin Chuan might find it even more difficult. Who knows?" Yi Qingning smiled lightly. "Maybe Qin Haoshuan will die in this insect plague. If that's the case, the Qin family might turn around and try to win over Qin Chuan." Speaking of Qin Haoshuan, Su Kuang also sighed. He really didn't expect that Qin Haoshuan, who was once able to firmly suppress him, would actually fall into such a situation. In the end, it was because Qin Haoshuan failed to live up to expectations, so he couldn't blame Qin Chuan for being too dazzling. Buzz! Suddenly, a buzzing sound came from outside the cave. A cloud of insects descended from the sky and surrounded the cave. Countless flying insects landed on the defensive array glyphs and started to devour the defensive array glyphs. Chapter 450. Oh no, these insects are devouring defensive array. Fei Peng, who was the first to discover this situation, cried out in alarm. Then turning his head to look at Long Xiao, he hastily said, quickly reinforced the array. Long Shao looked at those densely packed flying insects at the entrance of the cave with dignified expression, then shook his head and said, "It's no use. Our reinforcement speed is simply not enough to catch up with the devouring speed of these insects. We must think of a way to break through. We can't be trapped here." Hearing Long Shao, Fei Peng immediately looked towards Yaorao and asked, "Princess Yaorao, what should we do?" Facing Fei Peng's request, Yaorao, however, acted as if she didn't hear it, still closed her eyes and didn't say a word. Seeing the performance of Yaorao, Fei Peng somewhat had a headache and couldn't help but look towards Qin Chuan. If he wanted to make Yaorao speak, then first he must make Qin Chuan bow his head. However, in the face of Fei Peng's gaze, Qin Chuan remained unmoved. He continued to leisurely eat his jerky, chewing and swallowing bit by bit. He was very leisurely. When everyone saw Yaorao and Qin Chuan's performance was more leisurely than the other, they were somewhat anxious. If they continued to waste time like this and wait until the defensive array was completely devoured, then it would be somewhat difficult for them to break through. I propose everyone to form arrow formation and break through. When everyone was silent, Bai Feng stood up and proposed everyone to form arrow formation and break through as soon as possible. "Then who will be the arrow formation?" "I will do it." Su Kuang stood up and took the initiative to take the most dangerous and pressure arrow formation. "I am a sword cultivator, and I am most proficient in offense, so let me take this position." "Let me do it." Sun Yu looked at Su Kuang. "With this stick strike, these flying insects will be annihilated." Seeing Sun Yu and Su Kuang were about to argue, Yaorao suddenly stood up, then said to everyone, "What is there to argue about?" Hearing Yaorao, everyone calmed down, then looked towards her. Fei Peng couldn't help but asked, "Princess, do you have any good proposal?" "No." Yaorao looked towards Qin Chuan, who was still tearing the meat jerky, and asked, "Do you still intend to continue sitting here?" Facing the inquiry of Yaorao, Qin Chuan was calm and collected and didn't say a word. He was still leisurely eating his jerky, as if there was nothing more important than filling his stomach right now. Seeing Qin Chuan's performance, Yaorao took 2 steps forward, stretched out her hand, and snatched the dried meat from Qin Chuan's hand, then asked, "I am a girl. Can't you yield to me?" Qin Chuan slowly raised his eyes and looked at Yaorao, then slightly pursed his lips. "What should be yielded? What should be fought for? Don't yield an inch. You." Yaorao angrily said, "Good. Then don't let everyone die here. Can you two stop arguing?" Yi Qingning looked at the defensive array at the entrance of the cave, then said to everyone, "If you really want to die, then simply commit suicide so as to avoid suffering the pain of being swallowed by those insects." "Humph!" Yaorao coldly snorted, then said to all the demon generals, "All of you listen when we break out." Yaorao didn't finish her words, then stopped, not because she wanted to stop, but because Qin Chuan suddenly appeared in front of her, then reached out his hand and covered her mouth. Qin Chuan calmly looked at Yaorao, then indifferently said, "When you let your emotions affect your decisions, some words are best not to be easily spoken." Finished speaking, Qin Chuan didn't care about the reaction of Yaorao, turned around, and walked towards the entrance of the cave. He took out the last piece of top-grade Thunder Spirit stone from his storage ring, then said to everyone, "I will count to 3. Don't worry about anything. Immediately use Su Kuang as the vanguard to break out of the encirclement. No matter what happens later, don't be distracted." "Hey, why should we listen to you?" Yaorao looked at Qin Chuan, and her expression was exceptionally unpleasant. "Whether you listen or not is your matter. I don't care." Qin Chuan didn't turn his head, tightly clenched the top-grade Thunder Spirit stone in his hand, then said, "Now, 3, 2. Seeing Qin Chuan directly counted down, Yaorao still wanted to say something, but other people were already prepared to break out of the encirclement. When Qin Chuan counted to 1, Su Kuang immediately rushed towards the entrance of the cave and brandished the sword in his hand, releasing incomparably swift and fierce sword chi. Everyone didn't communicate with each other, and in almost an instant they formed into the vanguard formation, then quickly rushed out of the cave. But just after they rushed out of the cave, they encountered the insect cloud. Looking around, all around them were densely packed flying insects. Just when everyone's heart was slightly flustered, along with a burst of crackling sound of thunder, an azure-colored radiance suddenly exploded in the middle of the gray-black insect cloud, and soon after covered the sky and earth, turning the insect cloud into flying ash in a flash. After being cleared by the power of thunder, everyone's field of vision suddenly became wide open. Under the lead of Su Kwang, everyone kept moving forward, and every time they encountered a huge insect cloud, there would always be a power of thunder descending from the sky, and most of the flying insects would be turned into nothingness, and the remaining flying insects were no longer enough to cause any disturbance to everyone. Before they really faced insect plague, everyone didn't know what this insect plague was like, but now that they were surrounded by insect cloud, everyone realized that this insect plague was far more serious than they had imagined, and also more terrifying. 1 hour passed by. Everyone had rushed out no less than several 100,000 meters in the insect cloud, but they still hadn't rushed out of the insect plague's range, so much so that they couldn't even see the end of the insect plague. Facing this seemingly endless insect plague, everyone who had already consumed more than half of their strength couldn't help but become somewhat fidgety and restless. In the end, when will we be able to rush out? Fei Peng was somewhat angry. He really hated those damn Zerd to death. Su Kwang also wanted to know when they would be able to rush out. He already didn't know how many sword chi he had sent out. The meridians of his whole body were faintly aching. He was already in overdraft state. Don't talk, quietly break out. Bai Feng looked at the flying insects all around him. His mood was somewhat restless, but he still forced himself to remain calm. Hold on a little longer. We will be able to rush out very soon. Zzz. Another power of thunder descending from the sky destroyed a piece of insect cloud. But compared to the previous few times, this time the power of thunder descending was clearly a lot weaker. Clearly, Qinchuan's strength was also not unlimited. He was also about to reach his limit. When Qinchuan couldn't use his power of thunder to clear the insect cloud, they would really be in danger. All of you be careful. Let me do it. Yao Rao, who was in the center of everyone's protection, shouted, then took out Tian Yifan. Just when she wanted to borrow the might of Tian Yifan to clear the obstacles in front of her, suddenly a golden light descended from the sky, and wherever it passed, the insect cloud completely dissipated. 10,000 swords returned to origin. Along with a burst of cold shout, countless golden sword light descended from the sky, and instantly swept away the insect cloud in the sky. Chapter 451. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, a graceful figure in a blue dress slowly landed in front of them amidst the rain of swords. Looking at the woman who landed in front of them, the humans immediately recognized her identity. She was the Queen of Blades of Starry Sky College, Qinchuan's senior sister, Zhou Lin. Zhou Lin looked at the formation of the humans and demons in front of her. Although she felt strange, she didn't think too much about it and directly asked, "Where is Qinchuan?" "I'm here." Qinchuan's figure suddenly dashed over from behind. He was also a little surprised to see Zhou Lin suddenly appear. Seeing Qinchuan's figure appear in front of her safe and sound, Zhou Lin's heart that had been hanging in the air finally settled down. However, the expression on her face immediately turned cold. She took a step forward, raised her hand, and heavily punched Qinchuan's chest. "Have you already forgotten the promise we made together? Why did you have to face danger alone?" Facing Zhou Lin's questioning, Qinchuan smiled bitterly and said, "Senior sister, now is not the time to talk about this. Let's go to a safe place first." Zhou Lin glared at Qinchuan and said coldly, "Xiaoyao Palace is not far ahead. It's very safe there." Hearing Zhou Lin's words, everyone was a little surprised. They didn't expect that they would actually come to the vicinity of Xiaoyao Palace. At this moment, the insect cloud that filled the sky once again surrounded them, but they still couldn't see anything. Everyone followed behind Zhou Lin. With Zhou Lin's sword light leading the way, they soon arrived in front of Xiaoyao Palace. Compared to other places, Xiaoyao Palace was really a lot quieter. Any flying insects that dared to trespass into Xiaoyao Palace were all killed without exception. Everyone climbed up the stairs of Xiaoyao Palace and looked back at the insect cloud that covered the sky. They still had lingering fears. If they hadn't accidentally rushed to the vicinity of Xiaoyao Palace, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin, who was standing beside him, and asked curiously, "Senior sister, how did you find us?" Under the cover of the insect cloud, visibility was definitely not more than 100 meters. Under such circumstances, it was really amazing that Zhou Lin could discover them and come to their aid. "I didn't see any of you, but I saw Lei." Zhou Lin pursed her lips and explained, "I saw lightning flashing in the distance and guessed that it might be you, so I went over." Only after hearing Zhou Lin's explanation did everyone understand. Zhou Lin had seen Qin Chuan's thunderbolt when he destroyed the insect swarm, which was why she had hurried over to help them. Under these circumstances, the thunderbolt was indeed more eye-catching and easier to discover. "No matter what, we have to thank you, senior sister." Qin Chuan smiled. "If it weren't for your help, we wouldn't have made it this far." Qin Chuan was very clear about his situation at the time. He had already absorbed all of the high-grade Thunder Spirit Stone. His meridians were already in extreme pain, and he couldn't bear it any longer. If Zhou Lin hadn't appeared, they might have fallen into a bitter battle inside the insect cloud. At that time, there might not even be many people who could come out alive. What's there to think? This Empress has Tian Yi Fan. Even if she didn't appear, this Empress can still lead you here. Just when everyone was thanking Zhou Lin, Yao Rao coldly snorted. She didn't want to thank them. Zhou Lin glanced at Yao Rao, but didn't pay too much attention to Yao Rao. And Qin Chuan also pretended not to hear Yao Rao's words and said to Zhou Lin, "Senior sister, let's go. We can talk after we go up." Zhou Lin nodded her head and said, "Okay, it just so happens that I also have something to say to you." Seeing Qin Chuan and Zhou Lin walking side by side, Yao Rao was really angry. Gnashing her teeth, she said, "I didn't lie. This Empress has Tian Yi Fan in my hand, so how could I be afraid of insignificant insect cloud?" Yi Qingning, who was standing beside Yao Rao, slightly smiled. Then looking at Yao Rao with subtle expression, she said, "At that time, I saw that you were imperceptibly influencing Su Kuang, making him come here. You also knew that Qin Chuan wouldn't be able to hold on for long. So all along you were waiting for the right opportunity to make us owe you a favor and make Qin Chuan lower his head. But the appearance of Zhou Lin disrupted your plan, making your plan fail, right?" Hearing Yi Qingning, Yao Rao coldly shot a glance at her and said, "You think you are very smart?" Yi Qingning smiled. "At least I don't think I am smart. In the end, you are still too naive, thinking that by using such means you can make Qin Chuan lower his head. I can only say that you still don't understand Qin Chuan. By the way, do you know the relationship between Qin Chuan and that girl?" Having heard Yi Qingning's words, Yao Rao slightly frowned and asked, "Don't tell me it is not the relationship between senior sister and junior brother?" Yi Qingning profoundly looked at Yao Rao and said, "All of us knew Qin Chuan after Qin Chuan became outstanding, but that senior sister of Qin Chuan actually knew Qin Chuan before Qin Chuan made a name for himself. Moreover, she always took care of Qin Chuan very attentively, so, do you understand?" Finished speaking, Yi Qingning didn't care about Yao Rao's reaction. She lifted her foot and walked away. Yao Rao hatefully glared at the back view of Yi Qingning. This woman was simply too hateful. What was the meaning of her words? On the stairs, Qin Chuan frowned, looked at Zhou Lin, and asked, "So, basically all the human race and monster race in the Carefree Secret Territory have come to Carefree Palace?" Zhou Lin nodded and said, "If it weren't for the existence of the restriction, perhaps a war would have already broken out. Now both sides occupy a place and are confronting each other." Speaking until here, Zhou Lin paused slightly and asked, "Why are you mixed with the monster race?" "It's a long story." Qin Chuan briefly summarized what had happened in Xiaozhong Mountain. Hearing Qinchuan's words, Zhou Lin couldn't help but be surprised. You actually met Zerg. Could it be that this insect disaster is related to Zerg? Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qinchuan was very surprised. Senior sister, you know Zerg? Zhou Lin nodded solemnly and said to Qinchuan in a somewhat dignified tone, not only do I know Zerg, but I also learned Zerg's language since I was a child, and I understand Zerg's habits and culture. This time, Qinchuan was completely shocked. He didn't expect Zhou Lin to know so much about Zerg. Seeing the shock on Qinchuan's face, Zhou Lin said in a subtle tone, actually, I wanted to tell you something for a long time, but I never had the chance. Now that you have come into contact with Zerg and know some things about Zerg, then I can also tell you some things. Qinchuan, you must still remember, hey chum. Chapter 452. Hearing Zhou Lin mention Black City, Qinchuan couldn't help but think of Chu Hua and his daughter Chu Ning, the governor of Black City in the state capital of Qing. Back then, he also obtained the Spiritual Talisman Array and the Spiritual Talisman Array from Chu Hua. These two extremely rare level 4 Talisman Array inscription methods. It could be said that his current cultivation state was largely due to these 2 Talisman Arrays. Of course, I know about Black City. Qinchuan was a little confused. But what does Zerg's matter have to do with Black City? Zhou Lin glanced deeply at Qinchuan and said, actually, Black Citadel isn't like what you think. It's just a place similar to an underground black market. Black Citadel is an organization that can go against the 4 great clans and 10 great sects. Qinchuan was stunned for a moment, as if he thought of something, and asked Zhou Lin, Senior, you're from Black City? Zhou Lin nodded and said to Qinchuan, I am from Black City. My father is also from Black City. Yusin is also from Black City. However, we have never considered ourselves as people from Black City. This has always been a secret that we do not tell others. Qinchuan looked at Zhou Lin with a puzzled expression and asked again, but what does this have to do with Zerg? Speaking of which, if there's no Zerg, there might not be Black City. Zhou Lin sighed and said to Qinchuan, the leader of Black City was a powerful cultivator of the human race during the Great Chaos. After the insectoids were defeated by the combined forces of the human race and the demon race, due to some differences in opinion, this powerful cultivator angrily withdrew from the human race's Supreme Council and established Black City. The purpose of Black City is free trade and free development. As long as you have money, you can buy everything you want in Black City. As long as you have talent, you can get an important position in Black City. You can shine in the field that you are good at. What do you think of after hearing this? Qinchuan took a deep look at Zhou Lin and said, Black Castle is going against the aristocratic families and sections. They are providing protection to the civilians who have nowhere to go. That's right, Black City is fighting against the aristocratic families and sects, trying its best to provide a relatively equal environment for the civilians. Starry Sky Academy is funded and established by Black City. Starry Sky Academy will focus on recruiting and cultivating civilian geniuses, which is related to the purpose of Black City. Most of the students who graduated from Starry Sky Academy, as long as they are outstanding, will be accepted by Black City and become a member of Black City. The aristocratic families and sects actually allowed Black City, a force that has the power to overthrow them, to exist. Qinchuan found it hard to believe. This did not seem like the style of an aristocratic family or sect. That's the truth. Zhou Lin smiled. Of course, there's a prerequisite. That is, Black City has to have enough resources and strength to make the aristocratic families and sects not dare to act rashly. Hearing Zhou Lin's explanation, Qinchuan thought about it carefully and felt that what Zhou Lin said made sense. He looked at Zhou Lin and asked, when you were waiting for me in Black City, were you already a member of Black City? Zhou Lin nodded. I was already a member of Black City at that time, but I didn't have any status in Black City at that time. Qinchuan looked at Zhou Lin curiously and asked, do you have a status in Black City now? It's not a status. I just received corresponding treatment to my performance. This time, I entered the unfettered secret territory to help Black City obtain the key to open the unfettered secret territory. Key? You're also here for the key? Yes, when I learned that you were going to enter the unfettered secret territory on behalf of the Qin family and look for the key for the Qin family, I actually had something to say to you, but I didn't say it out loud. Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but think of Zhou Lin's hesitation when she said goodbye to him in Star Dragon City. It seemed that her hesitation at that time should have something to do with the key. Qin Chuan, did you get the key? No. Qin Chuan shook his head frankly. To be honest, he didn't even know what the key looked like or where it was, let alone whether he got it or not. Hearing this, Zhou Lin sighed regretfully and said, I thought it was possible for you to get the key, but I didn't expect that you didn't get it. Zhou Lin trusted Qin Chuan's answer very much. She didn't think that Qin Chuan would lie to her about such a small matter. Moreover, she didn't intend to ask Qin Chuan for the key. Senior sister, is the key to the unfettered secret territory very important to you? Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin with a slightly complicated expression. If you really need that key, I will help you. Zhou Lin stopped, turned to look at Qin Chuan, and asked, You gave me the key, so what are you going to do? How are you going to deal with the Qin family? I only promised to do my best for the Qin family, but I never said that I would definitely help them get the key back. Moreover, even if I get the key back for them, they won't necessarily let me go. Qin Chuan had already thought things through. Indeed, he wanted to settle the grudges between him and the Qin clan. However, the Qin clan had never thought of this. As long as he was still alive, he would always be a thorn in the flesh of the Qin clan. They had to get rid of him as soon as possible. As for the Qin clan's bloodline flowing in his veins, that was nothing more than a joke. In front of such a huge benefit, what did the thin bloodline between him and the Qin clan count for? It's Black City that needs the key, not me. Zhou Lin shook her head and refused Qin Chuan's kindness. Whether I get the key or not, it won't have any impact on my future, and I don't want you to bear anything for me. Hearing Zhou Lin's words, Qin Chuan didn't mention this matter again. Instead, he asked about the Zergs. Senior sister, do you people in Black City have to learn about Zerg? Zhou Lin nodded and said, the original intention of Black City was to fight against Zerg. Although Zerg hasn't appeared again for thousands of years, Black City has always believed that Zerg will come again. Now it seems that Black City's worries are correct. Zerg has appeared again. According to what you said, Zerg is very likely to want to use the carefree secret realm as the foundation and gradually encroach on our world. It's just that they didn't expect to meet you in the carefree secret realm, and the plan was thus destroyed. However, I believe that Zerg will never give up so easily. Qin Chuan nodded in agreement. He also felt that Zerg would not easily give up invading their world and would definitely make a comeback. By the way, what is the name of our world? Qin Chuan looked at Zhou Lin very seriously. In his knowledge, this world had the Star Dragon Federation and the Demon Realm, but there had never been a unified name. Zhou Lin looked up at the sky, her eyes slightly complicated. Translated through Zerg's language, our world should be called the Land of Exile. Chapter 453. When Qin Chuan arrived at the square in front of Xiao Yao Palace, he was warmly welcomed by almost everyone. Qin Chuan couldn't help but feel like he was holding a solo concert and receiving flowers from his fans. Among the people who welcomed Qin Chuan, some are people who had been rescued by Qin Chuan from Xiaozhou Mountain. Some are people who had heard of Qin Chuan's heroic deeds. There were also people who admired Qin Chuan because of his performance in the 6 Great Academies ranking competition. In short, except for a few people who didn't have good intentions towards Qin Chuan, most of them were very warm towards Qin Chuan. Qin Chuan, thank you for saving me. At that time, I really thought I was going to die. I've been waiting to thank you for a long time. Finally, I can thank you face to face. Qin Chuan, I don't care about your family background or identity. From now on, you are the boss that I recognize. Qin Chuan, I looked down on you in the past. That was my fault. If anyone looks down on you in the future, I will beat them to death. Hearing the shouts of the people around him, Qin Chuan smiled and greeted them. After dealing with them with great difficulty, he let out a sigh of relief and said to Zhou, who was beside him, I really didn't expect them to be so warm towards me. Hearing this, Zhou looked at Qin Chuan and asked, How do you feel? Qin Chuan thought seriously and replied, It's very strange. This feeling of being recognized and trusted is very good. Qin Chuan, I don't know how you will see me when I say these words to you. I don't think that they trust you or care about you. Instead, they hope that you will stand up again and solve their current problems for them through flattery. This is my point of view. It's very realistic. Hearing Zhou words, Qin Chuan couldn't help but be stunned. He didn't expect Zhou to think this way. You don't agree with what I said? Zhou looked at Qin Chuan. Maybe it's because I've been exposed to too many things, so my thoughts are inevitably a little dark. No. Qin Chuan shook his head. I know you. I know you're thinking about me. All right, let's not talk about these people. Let's go. Zhou walked forward. It's too noisy here. Let's go somewhere quieter. Qin Chuan followed behind Zhou. The two of them walked into Xiao Yao Palace. Here, they saw many members of the demon clan. Towards Qin Chuan's appearance, the expressions on these members of the demon clan changed slightly. There was no hostility and no greeting. They appeared relatively calm. The two of them continued forward. When they were about to reach the carefree residence, Zhou stopped and said to Qin Chuan, There are many people at the carefree residence. They're all thinking of ways to enter the carefree residence. It's better if you don't go there. Qin Chuan nodded. If he went near the carefree residence now and caused the restrictions to flicker, then there would be a big problem. However, when it came to the carefree residence, Qin Chuan had some thoughts. He was very curious about the 3 brocade boxes on the stone table. If he didn't get anything from this trip to the carefree secret territory and only fought everywhere, then it would be too much of a loss. Seeing Qin Chuan's gaze pass through the crowd and look at the stone table inside the carefree residence, Zhou smiled and asked, You're very interested in the 3 brocade boxes. Of course. Qin Chuan nodded. Since I entered the carefree secret territory until now, I haven't gotten any benefits. Now that the insects are flying everywhere outside, I can only think about these 3 brocade boxes. Speaking of which, is there any legend about these 3 brocade boxes? No. Zhou shook her head and said, As far as I know, these 3 brocade boxes have been here since the carefree secret territory was discovered. For thousands of years, no one has been able to enter the carefree residence. So how could they know what's inside the brocade boxes? And you are the most likely person I have seen to enter the carefree residence. If there was no insect plague outside, maybe you could give it a try, but now there is a sea of people here, so you can't do anything. Hearing this, Qin Chuan also felt that it was a pity. If there weren't so many people here, he could try to enter the carefree residence. If he tried to do such a thing now, he would definitely become the target of public criticism. Tell me, who is that woman? Zhou looked at Qin Chuan curiously. I can see that she cares about you very much. Qin Chuan smiled bitterly and asked, Senior sister, are you talking about Yao Rao? Yao Rao? Zhou looked pensive. Is she from the monster race? Qin Chuan nodded. She is the princess of the monster race, Princess Rao. Zhou was slightly surprised. She's actually a princess, but I didn't sense the slightest bit of monster chi from her body. When I first saw her, I also felt strange. She didn't have the slightest bit of monster chi on her body, so she didn't look like a monster race. However, she is indeed Princess Rao of the monster race. Otherwise, those holy sons and holy daughters of the monster race wouldn't be so obedient to her. Regarding Yao Rao, Qin Chuan didn't hate her, but he also didn't like her. Overall, the feeling was quite strange. You have a story with her. Zhou didn't look at Qin Chuan. Her eyes were looking into the distance, seemingly unfocused. Qin Chuan smiled. There is a story, but senior sister, isn't it a bit inappropriate for us to talk about these romantic things now? There are still insects flying all over the sky outside. Wind, flowers, snow, moon. Zhou slowly turned her head to look at Qin Chuan. I didn't think that the story between the two of you would be romantic. Qin Chuan grinned and smiled awkwardly. Senior sister, when we get out, don't go anywhere. Go straight back to the Black Moon Combat Academy. Zhou suddenly changed the topic. What you need to do now is wait patiently. Wait for what? Qingchuan was curious. Senior sister, do you know something? Since you know about Zerg, then you should know about the heir of the monster race. Based on your performance in the 6th Great Academy's ranking competition, as well as your trip to the Carefree Secret Realm, you have the qualifications to become a preparatory Holy Son. As long as you don't give the Qin family a chance to cause trouble after leaving the Carefree Secret Realm, no one will be able to stop you from becoming a preparatory Holy Son. Although your teacher, Ningya, is only at the Golden Core Complete Realm, she still has some face. If worst comes to worst, she can still intimidate others and use her teacher, the Dean of the Black Moon Combat Academy, as a pretext. Senior sister, you've already arranged everything for me? This isn't my arrangement, it's my suggestion. In my opinion, this is the most important thing for you to do in the following period of time, and it's also the best choice for you. Senior sister, I'm actually not as weak as you think. Do I have to wait until I hit a wall before I choose to turn back? Qingchuan was silent, and Zhou was silent as well. The two of them just stared ahead, thinking about their own matters. Chapter 454. Under the cover of the insect cloud, two pitch-black figures stood on top of the mountain, exuding an evil aura. We have a clue. Band walked slowly to Sienna's side. He glanced at Sienna, who was looking into the distance, and said to her, "According to the little guy's feedback, I found traces of those people. They went to the place called Freedom Palace and hid in the restriction." When Band had first discovered Xiao Yao Palace, he had commanded the insect cloud to enter Xiao Yao Palace. However, the insect cloud had been wiped out the moment it entered Xiao Yao Palace. After several attempts, Band realized that he couldn't break into Xiao Yao Palace, so he gave up the idea of invading Xiao Yao Palace. Now that he knew that Qingchuan and his group had entered Xiao Yao Palace, Band couldn't help but feel a little troubled. If those people hid in Xiao Yao Palace for the rest of their lives, they would never be able to avenge their dead brothers. Sienna knew the situation in Freedom Palace very well. She also knew that most of the Monster Clan and the Demon Clan had gathered in Freedom Palace. As long as they could wipe out the Monster Clan and the Monster Clan in Freedom Palace, they would be invincible in Freedom's Secret Land. The restriction in Freedom Palace is too big a threat to us. We have to get rid of it. I know that too. However, the restriction was set up by an expert thousands of years ago. We can't break it. If we can't break it with brute force, we can use a trick to lure those people out. As long as they leave Freedom Palace, they won't be a match for us. Ban shook his head and said, "Unless the insect plague disappears, it's impossible for those people to leave Xiao Yao Palace. I have a way to lure them out." Sienna turned to look at Band and said, "When you were away, I met an interesting person." Upon hearing Sienna's words, Band looked at him in confusion. He was curious about who Sienna was referring to. "Believe me, as long as he is willing to cooperate with us, those people in Freedom Palace will die," Sienna said confidently. Victory was in her hands. "The final victory will be ours." Freedom Palace. Qingchuan looked in the direction of the front hall, curiously. He asked Zhou, who was beside him, "What's going on over there? It looks so lively." "I don't know." Zhou shook her head. "If you're curious, let's go take a look." As Zhou spoke, Chen Chongqing's figure appeared in their field of vision. He walked towards them with small steps. His cautious manner of being afraid of triggering the restriction was rather comical. Boss, Qin Haoshuan is here." Chen Chongqing walked to Qingchuan's side and said excitedly to Qingchuan, who didn't see it just now. When everyone heard that Qin Haoshuan had appeared, they really wanted to eat him alive. It was simply too savage. Qingchuan was surprised when he heard this. He didn't expect that the commotion in the front hall was caused by Qin Haoshuan's appearance. "What's going on? Tell me." Qin Haoshuan had no choice but to hide in Freedom Palace to avoid the insect plague. However, he seemed to know that his reputation had been tarnished. He deliberately hid at the foot of the mountain and didn't come up. He was discovered by those who came later. Then, one person spread the news to 10 people, and 10 people spread the news to 100 people. Everyone knew that Qin Haoshuan was also here. So, a group of people went down the mountain to look for Qin Haoshuan. After hearing Chen Chongqing's explanation, Qin Xuan frowned slightly and asked, "What do those people want to do? Don't tell me they want to drive Qin Haoshuan out of Freedom Palace? Who cares about them?" Chen Chongqing said indifferently. "In my opinion, Qin Haoshuan reaped what he sowed. If he didn't seek death, others wouldn't treat him like this. Boss, don't worry about this matter. Let's just watch the show. It will take at least a few hours to walk from the top of the mountain to the foot of the mountain. Maybe some people will regret and come back halfway." Zhou Lin pursed her lips and said to Qin Xuan rationally, "After all, Qin Haoshuan is a member of the Qin clan. Now that they are in the Freedom's secret realm, they might dare to curse him behind his back. However, when they face him directly, I don't think anyone has the guts to accuse him. After all, when they leave the Freedom's secret realm, they still have to live under the shadow of the Qin clan. How would they dare to offend Qin Haoshuan?" After hearing Zhou Lin's rational analysis, Chen Chongqing was stunned for a moment. He didn't think too much about it. However, after thinking about it carefully, Zhou Lin's words seemed to make sense. "Who cares? Anyway, it's fine as long as he doesn't appear in front of me. Otherwise, I will definitely catch him and give him a good scolding." Chen Chongqing smiled. "Others are afraid of the Qin clan, but I'm not." Just as Qin Xuan and the others were chatting, Duan Yusin, who had followed them to join the fun, came back. She looked at Qin Xuan and said with a strange tone, "Is the Qin clan so scary?" Those people were clamoring to teach Qin Haoshuan a lesson. However, after taking a few steps, they all found an excuse to sneak back. It's really speechless. After hearing this, Qin Xuan asked curiously, "They all sneaked back?" Duan Yusin shook her head. "Not really. Some of the collateral relatives of the Qin clan and some disciples of the aristocratic families attached to the Qin clan all went down the mountain. I guess they didn't come to reprimand Qin Haoshuan, but to welcome him. It's really disgusting." Zhou Lin sneered and said disdainfully, "This is the face of an aristocratic family's disciple." Looking at the sneer on Zhou Lin's face, Qin Xuan sighed in his heart. He felt that Zhou Lin was a little too paranoid. In fact, not all the people of the aristocratic families were like this. For example, Chen Chongqing, Long Xiao, Su Kuang, and Yi Qingming were also from the aristocratic families. However, they didn't appear to be arrogant or aloof. On the contrary, they could get along very well with each other. They didn't have the arrogance of a young master or a young lady. However, Qin Xuan wouldn't say these words to Zhou Lin. This was because he knew that Zhou Lin hated the aristocratic families very much. Since childhood, she had been instilled with the idea of flattening the aristocratic families and sects so that everyone in the world could get along with each other as equals. Growing up in such an environment, Zhou Lin naturally didn't have a good impression of the people of the aristocratic families and sections. "Big brother, if Qin Haoshuan comes later, what do you plan to do?" Chen Chongqing looked at Qin Xuan. "Do you want to ridicule him? There's no need." Qin Xuan shook his head and said to Chen Chongqing, "Let them do whatever they want. I just want to quietly stay here until the insect plague subsides or until the unfettered secret territory closes." Then, he would see if there was a chance to enter the unfettered residence and take the 3 brocade boxes. Of course, Qin Xuan didn't say the last sentence out loud. It wasn't that he didn't trust Chen Chongqing, but this matter was of great importance. At this stage, the fewer people who knew about it, the better. Chapter 455. Princess, Qin Haoshuan has arrived at the square of Front Hall. Ma Zhouan walked to the front of Yaorao, who was sitting on the praying mat, and said in a low voice, "Many people have gone to watch the fun." Hearing Ma Zhouan mentioning Qin Haoshuan, Yaorao slowly opened her eyes and asked, "Is there any reaction from Qin Xuan's side?" "No." Ma Zhouan shook her head and replied, "Qin Xuan and his senior sister are still sitting at the side of Carefree House. They don't have any intention of coming over to watch Qin Haoshuan's fun. Humph, Yao Rao coldly snorted. He is actually able to keep his composure. Now, after making inquiries from various parties, Yao Rao had basically understood the relationship between Qin Xuan and Qin Haoshuan as well as what had happened between them. In her opinion, Qin Xuan and Qin Haoshuan were absolutely mortal enemies, and it was impossible for them to coexist peacefully. But after hearing about the matter of Qin Haoshuan, Qin Xuan was as calm as Mount Tai. Clearly, it was not because he didn't want to find trouble with Qin Haoshuan. Rather, he had something more important to do than finding trouble with Qin Haoshuan. Clearly, that more important matter was certainly related to that senior sister of his. If Qin Xuan knew about Yao Rao's mental activity at this moment, then perhaps he would be greatly surprised. Because Yao Rao's guess was right, he indeed had something more important to do, and it was indeed related to Zhoulin. But it had nothing to do with romance. He was only thinking about how to take out those 3 brocade boxes from the stone table of Carefree House. Let's go and take a look. Yao Rao stood up and said to several holy sons beside her, "Wait until you see Qin Haoshuan, then ruthlessly ridicule him for me, then ruthlessly praise Qin Xuan. Do you hear me?" Hearing the command of Yao Rao, Fei Peng and Bai Feng couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. They were somewhat helpless. At the square of Front Hall, Qin Haoshuan had already freshened up and changed into clean clothes. He looked very elegant and had the demeanor of a noble young master. At his side, several people who were also dressed like noble young masters were surrounding him, and they were chatting with Qin Haoshuan with a smile on their faces. They were sighing about the hardships and difficulties of this trip to carefree secret territory and completely didn't mention the matter of Little Zhong Mountain. There were some people around them who were watching with cold eyes. Even though they felt disdain in their hearts, they did not say anything. Clearly, they did not want to offend Qin Haoshuan. It's really not easy for Haoshuan to pass through the insect plague and come to Xiao Yao Palace alone. I think you're probably the only one in the world who has such strength. Yes, Haoshuan's life is too difficult. We all have companions to support each other, but he's alone. It's much harder for him. It's difficult for us, but it's as easy as pie for Haoshuan. Huh. As Qin Haoshuan listened to the praises of the people around him, it was as if he had returned to the days when everyone was studying together in school. A confident smile appeared on his face as he humbly said, "It's just some insignificant tricks. It's not worth mentioning at all. Indeed, it's not worth mentioning. He's just a scoundrel. Even if he has the face to say it, I might not even want to hear it." Just when everyone was praising Qin Haoshuan, Fei Peng suddenly walked over with a cold smile on his face. He looked at Qin Haoshuan with a disdainful gaze. When everyone saw the sudden appearance of Fei Peng, their expressions became somewhat subtle. Qin Haoshuan's smile stiffened on his face. He looked somewhat embarrassed and distressed. "Demon Clan's thief, don't try to act viciously. Haoshuan is the human clan's heaven's pride. How can you slander him so wantonly?" Someone stood out and angrily rebuked Fei Peng to defend Qin Haoshuan's reputation. This caused Fei Peng to burst into laughter. "Ha ha! This kind of trash deserves to be called a heaven's pride? If he's a heaven's pride, then wouldn't someone as strong as Qin Xuan be a heaven's pride?" Fei Peng laughed heartily. "As for you, you only dare to show off in Xiao Yao Palace. If you were outside, even if I lent you some courage, would you dare to speak to me like this?" That person was rendered speechless by Fei Peng's rebuke. However, Qin Haoshuan's face instantly darkened when Fei Peng mentioned Qin Xuan. When Fei Peng saw the change in Qin Haoshuan's expression, he sneered again and mocked. "Why? You seem to be unconvinced? Then why don't you ask the people around you? When you abandoned them and ran away by yourself, who stood out to save them? In my opinion, apart from Qin Xuan, all the so-called heaven's pride of the human clan are worthless." Fei Peng unceremoniously started to mock everyone present. However, everyone was left speechless because what Fei Peng said was right. It was indeed Qin Xuan who stood out to save them when they were in danger. Compared to Qin Xuan, their strength was indeed not strong enough. "Fei Peng, what you said is wrong. At this moment, Bai Feng slowly walked over and said to Fei Peng in a somewhat reproachful manner, "How can you say that the dignified Qin Xuan of the Qin clan is worthless?" When everyone heard Bai Feng's words, they were a little surprised. Who would have thought that someone from the demon clan would actually stand out to speak good words for Qin Haoshuan? However, when they heard Bai Feng's next words, they almost couldn't hold back their laughter. Bai Feng looked at Qin Haoshuan with a smile and said to Fei Peng, "If Qin Haoshuan didn't set off Qin Xuan, how could Qin Xuan be so outstanding?" When Fei Peng heard Bai Feng's words, he laughed and said, "You are right. Qin Haoshuan is indeed somewhat useful." This is called a red flower, needs green leaves to set it off. When everyone heard Bai Feng and Fei Peng ridiculing Qin Haoshuan in unison, their expressions became extremely strange. They looked at Qin Haoshuan with a playful expression. Under the circumstances of the prohibition of Xiao Yao Palace, no one was allowed to use force. Therefore, they could only use their mouths. However, Fei Peng and Bai Feng had the upper hand. Qin Haoshuan couldn't say a single word when they refuted with facts. He could only remain silent with an ashen face. Facing the subtle gazes of the crowd and the wanton ridicule of Fei Peng and Bai Feng, Qin Haoshuan felt that he was going to go crazy. If it wasn't for the thunder punishment prohibition of Xiao Yao Palace, he would have definitely taught Fei Peng and Bai Feng a lesson. He would have let them know that trouble comes from careless talk. However, compared to his hatred for Fei Peng and Bai Feng, the person that Qin Haoshuan hated the most was Qin Xuan. If it wasn't for Qin Xuan, he wouldn't be where he was today. If he didn't have the status of being a member of the Qin clan, Qin Haoshuan would be nothing. I think he wouldn't even be qualified to carry Qin Xuan's shoes. Fei Peng seemed to be very good at ridiculing people. Not only were his words sharp, but they were also aimed at Qin Haoshuan's vital points. As long as he belittled Qin Haoshuan, he would definitely praise Qin Xuan. This caused the anger in Qin Haoshuan's heart to rise. Seeing that Qin Haoshuan was about to explode, Fei Peng ridiculed him again. "I heard that Qin Xuan is also a member of the Qin clan. Why do you think that even though they are both members of the Qin clan, the one who grew up outside is more outstanding than the one who was carefully nurtured by the Qin clan? Is it because the nurturing policy of the Qin clan is not good? Or is it because the person is not good?" You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.